Okay, the meeting will come to order at 7 p.m. Roll call?
Mrs. Hauk?
Here.
Mr. Marably?
Here.
Mrs. Nelson?
Here.
Mrs. O'Halloran?
Here.
Mr. Wrigley? Mrs. Tegmeyer? Mrs. Sedlak?
Here. If we could please stand for the
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Any additional items to be placed on the agenda this evening?
No.
Anybody else? Nothing? All right, open forum. Anyone in the audience this evening wishes to address the board? All right, we'll go on to the consent agenda, consisting of approving regular meeting minutes of December 19th, 2012, approved closed session meeting minutes of December 19th, 2012, approved payment of December payroll, January warrants, declassified selected closed session minutes, approved Hinsdale District 86 LADSI withdrawal resolution, approved grade 1 job share for 2013-14, approved January 2013 personnel report. If I could first ask about the bills. Mark, you are a bill checker?
Correct. And I just had a couple questions. One was on page 4. The item number 27, the shipping charges for device repairs. That was the first time I had recalled seeing something come under that particular vendor. And what that was just device repairs for devices that the children or child needed for special needs. Then on page 7, I had a question on 49, and that was the second half tuition payment. And then moving to the payables pre-list, I guess page 1, there were a number of medical reimbursements, and that was the first time that I recalled seeing anything like that. Those actually weren't supposed to be on here. They were part of the employee's flexible benefit plan. So that is actually their cash that they're putting aside in a flexible benefit savings plan, if you will. So those items, and the one I believe on the next page, really shouldn't even appear on here. And that was all the questions I had.
Anyone else on the bills?
I'll add that I had those exact same questions, Mark, which was interesting, but also I noticed that we were missing some charges, for Hodges, which is usually monthly charge, and apparently that was just a timing thing that we'll have that next month, so we'll probably have 2 months worth. Also, the credit card charges that quickly go on, the Empress, BMO or whatever, but that apparently we had a $3,000 credit, so we don't have itemized expenses to offset that, but they'll show up next month also. So that was just an FYI.
Anything else on that, Karen? On the bills?
No.
No. Gina,
I just said number 25, bonds at Gradlet for $2,600. Because I thought they were just doing our tax appeals now, and usually the bill's really low. Is that for, what was that for?
The presentation, all the work they had to do for the reports, and then there were some other filings that came up. I called Frantic and went through it in detail.
Is all for the tax appeals though?
Related matters to tax, yes.
That was it though?
Largely UPS.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you.
Anything else on the bills? Anything on the consent agenda?
I mentioned to Mark that, typically we don't have a consent agenda item without having a discussion on it, and the LADSI withdrawal resolution was on here, and without any discussion. I didn't know if anyone had any other interest to maybe discuss putting it on. Not saying that we can't put it as an agenda item at the end of the meeting, but just open it up if anyone else has any questions about it. So
specific to the Hinsdale District?
Correct.
86
the withdrawal resolution. Right.
Something that would go beyond, because we did have something on this once before.
A different school. 181 were true, so now 86, and it just showed up as a consent. I thought, and in the documentation it states, I asked Mark if we're going to have someone from District 86 here because they offer to, And he said no, that he didn't feel that there was any reason to, that there should be no question, and why, wouldn't we approve it? I'm not saying I'm not gonna approve it, I just thought that maybe we should discuss it. I had a
So
couple.
you'd like to have it come off the consent agenda?
If anyone does, as long as no one objects,
We could do that.
And then
We'll
put it
down
on for the-
as item 5 for reports and discussion item.
right, and then we can add it as consent afterwards, correct?
We can add it as an action item.
As an action item. And to the timing, they don't have to have an answer until, I think there's plenty of time, I think it's July or something.
No, that's not correct. They really would like responses now.
Okay, well, again, we could do it at the same time, but that, it goes against our protocol not to have some kind of discussion, just put it as a consent without any open discussion, so.
Okay, all right, so it'll go on as item number 5,
Great.
and we'll strike it off the consent. All right, anything else on the consent agenda? We have a motion then that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda as revised.
So moved.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as revised.
Mr. Mobley,
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson.
No.
Mrs. O'Halloran,
Yes.
Mrs. Hauk,
Yes.
Mrs. Sudler.
Yes. Ayes have it and the motion will carry. Reports and discussion items, starting with the superintendent's report, the elementary school summer construction.
Yes, first item is we have quite a roof project that we need to get done this summer. Just a little bit of background, I'll turn over to Mike. The board should recall that last summer we did some pre-work masonry work that was necessary in order to move to the next stage, and that's this roof project. And so this project will be, Mike will explain more about this, but this will be our biggest roof project for probably a decade we're looking at. And because the elementary school gets a lot of use in the summertime, what we've already set in motion is that the Lansing Summer School, which we always will be at a different location at a different district. And the reason for that is the window to complete the project would just be too small. If it would be just too risky because we can't, with the number of kids with special needs, and many are non-ambulatory, we just can't have equipment moving in and out of there during that time. So that it does make sense for a lot of different reasons, cost-wise, logistically, use of building, all of that to get this project done, and then really it's done for the foreseeable future as far as the roof work at the elementary. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you. Happy New Year. The roof areas that we're talking about at the elementary school are all the single-story flat area. It's in the roof records. It's areas 1, 2, 3, and 5. So those are the areas over the administration. Pardon?
And Ken.
Oh, yeah. So the flat areas are the 1,
Oh.
2, 3, and 5. And then the second area is the area at the second story, the older second story portion, which is roof area 10. So the single story areas over the administration, the first grade wing, I think it's called, the art room, music room, kind of that area, that is a kind of tar and gravel base. And the second roof area 10 is a membrane roof, or rubberized membrane roof. So the roof replacement will involve bringing the insulation, which is directly underneath the roofing, up to the current energy standards. So it means a greater amount of insulation on the roof, which is good for lots of different reasons. It does create a complication, a little bit of extra cost, because the edges of the roof have to be raised up because the roof goes all the way to the edge. So the costs involve raising those edges up to meet that new higher insulation standard. So the ground floor, you'll actually see it. We're replacing the metal panels at the ground floor. The second story is a little bit of brick ledge, so there it'll be hidden, that extra thickness. As part of this, because the roof gets thicker, there's things that sit on the roof have to be lifted off, raised up, and put back. So there's mechanical units, there's kind of roof drains, there's lots of different little things around that the costs kind of involve that. So there's lots of associated costs that go along with it. as, at roof area 10, associated with this project, is the removal of the main chiller for the building, taking it down in order to do the work and to put it back. So while that work is happening, the idea of putting an acoustical wall around it was brought up, as well as the replacement of the unit. The building, that wing was done in 1992, so that unit is 20 years old or 21 years old. It's pretty much at the end of its life, so the thought was, while it's down, instead of putting the old unit back, now's a good time to replace that unit. And so, as part of this recommendation, there's the replacement of that unit. So in total, the scope involves replacement of single-story tar and gravel and the second story, the older second story, removal and reinstallation of a lot of existing units, removal and replacement of the chiller, the main chiller, and an acoustical enclosure around that chiller because of the noise it generates. It doesn't currently have that acoustical enclosure.
The enclosure itself is 90,000, or does that include the chiller?
There is that cost includes the taking the chiller off and putting it back on. So
The old
there's
chiller.
pardon? The
Putting
old
the
chiller.
old chiller back on.
So it's
No, it's the new one.
Taking
So
the old
the-
chiller off and putting the new chiller on,
that's that extra. There's an additional 65,000 to replace the chiller.
the actual chiller, right?
Yeah, so there's some pluses, minuses in there, but in order to replace the chiller, it would be an additional $65,000.
Okay.
So that 90,000 does not include.
It's just for the screen and the removal and
Correct.
replacement.
Is there a reason why we're pursuing, or the proposal includes that acoustical screen? You said it was the thought, or the, where did this idea come from?
Actually, I've heard that being an issue for all the time I've been doing work at the elementary school, that there's a great deal of noise from the neighbors. So there's two noise that happen from that chiller. One is the vibrations. So whether the chiller is replaced or not, we're putting it on a new curb that has vibration isolation. So the sound transmitting into the building will be mitigated. So the second is the noise, since it's pretty high up. The sound for that unit goes into the neighborhood quite a bit, and I understand there's been many complaints about it. So the solution was generated from a response to those community concerns.
Could possibly a new chiller be less noisy?
Marginally. The equipment is basically the same style, same type. It's old equipment will have a little more rattling, but the noise that it generates is basically the same.
How long do chillers typically last?
Around 20 years. There's an organization, ASHRAE, that rates rooftop mechanical equipment. It's usually 15 to 20. It's in that range.
And there's nothing wrong with that other than it's old?
That's my understanding.
No.
But I don't know if ours.
I think the chiller is about 30 years old. That's what I heard from Bob.
Well, can we get a date? There's a discrepancy.
Um,
Can we find out how it was?
That wing was built in 91, 92, so.
So 92, you said it was 21 years old.
Do we know for a fact if the chiller was new at that time?
I don't know.
Can we find that out? And I have another question. Okay, so it still works though, right? Would we be able to like sell it to someone that's looking for a used chiller to recoup some of our money?
Well, if the contractor that bids on the job sees value in that, they would include it in their bid. So salvage value. So since it's a competitive bid, you have 10 contractors bidding against each other, looking for the best price to give for the work as they want the work. if they see a value in taking the chiller and selling it, your price, it's essentially like selling the unit, because you'll reap that benefit by his lower price.
Would he be the one selling it then, the
Mhm.
contractor?
Under that scenario,
Under
yes.
that scenario?
Typically, it's their responsibility for anything they remove to dispose of, so there'll be that salvage value, whatever
And
that
if they're
is.
usually included-
Unless we specifically call out to return to owner. And that's common when we renovate a classroom with a chalkboard, for instance. We say, remove the chalkboard, return to owner. Yep, that type of thing. And if that's a desire, we can certainly have that done. But essentially, that value will be included in the lowest contractor's price, theoretically.
Okay, I'm just writing that down. Salvage value usually comes within the bid. Okay, thank you.
But again, if there's a desire to have that, it can certainly be returned to you.
Mike, are there other chiller units up on the roof?
There are other rooftop mechanical units, not chillers.
This is the only chiller?
Correct.
Okay, so only mechanical, okay.
So if you see up there, there'll be different boxes, but they're air handlers of one sort or another.
How large is the footprint of the chiller?
It's about maybe 6 feet long, 6, 8 feet by, about 8 high.
And wide? 6 long?
Oh, yeah, maybe 4 or 5 feet by about 7 feet by about.
Okay, so maybe about 35, 32 square feet, thereabout.
Yeah. So an acoustical enclosure has to have a certain distance around it. So an enclosure will have a clearance of about 3, 4, 5 feet around the unit to
No,
allow airflow.
the reason for my thought is, if we entertain what Gina had said, then we've got to store 32 square feet somewhere until such time. when
Probably
they-
cubic, yeah, almost
Right.
cubic feet,
Right.
considering that.
Could I ask, okay, so we're doing 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10 according to your
Yes.
little drawing
Mhm.
here. So 4 and 5, no, 4 and 6, how old are they? And then 7 and 8. I know 11 and 12 are new wings, but it looks,
Yeah.
so this is over the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So how old are these rows?
Oh, those
So-
were replaced in, when this wing went on, number 4 was replaced, so I believe that was 98.
6 years later?
Something like that.
When what wing went on?
4 and 6. And then what about 7 and 8? We're not doing anything with 7 and 8? Is 7, that's a new?
No. That's correct.
And do you know the ages of those? Because like I said, the only ones that I know that are really fairly new are over here are 10 and 11, or I'm sorry, 11 and 12.
But didn't we, when we did the remodeling a couple of years ago, didn't we do some new to the roof then as well?
Above the office, correct,
Which would be
Oh, I didn't hear the
south.
question, I'm sorry.
Right.
Above the office,
Mhm.
That's
when
what I
when
thought.
that was renovated, that roof was redone.
Isn't that number 1 then?
Actually, they just patched. We put, 2 years ago when we renovated that office, there was, kind of modified the mechanical, so there was some roof work done, but only patching here and there, and that's, I think, when it was identified that that roof is old and has some issues.
Okay.
The office is number 1.
Yeah, that's the oldest section of the building.
So 7, 8, and 9 are these in between? Are they different levels?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is just, actually, that's outside, it's a
Okay.
canopy, that's actually a canopy area.
Okay. That's probably
And
why
that's,
there's 2 nines.
9 is also a canopy area outside, so 8 is over the library area. And I think it's a similar age as number 11, but I can find out for you the age of that.
So Karen, are you asking just out of
Well, I was
curiosity,
just-
as if we're doing 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10, why aren't we doing?
Right, because like I said, I knew 11 and 12 were new, so that made sense. I just wasn't sure why we weren't just doing the whole thing at once. Because I thought they were fairly about the same time.
Yeah, Mike, we talked about that through any other roofs at the elementary. We went over each section, and it was what, we expect at least 10 years out of any of those other sections.
That's correct. So the different roofs have, because of the different exposures, to have a certain, can even kind of live beyond what their normal lifespan might be. If it's, it doesn't have a lot of penetrations and things, and it's anticipated that no additional work at that building, or at the district, frankly, for another 10 years. There'll be little maintenance things that will happen naturally, but nothing of significance.
And then, Mike, the project schedule that you are proposing here, do you feel that February is an optimal time to try to go out for bid on this type of project?
It's fine, mostly because there's no lead time, or there are few lead time issues. We don't have a lot of, roofing is, it's readily available. So the only issue with lead time is on the chiller itself, and it's a manufactured, it's not a special type thing. So we're still early in the season, we have plenty of time, and it's a pretty good time to go out. Prices are still pretty good. Later, let's say May, would be very difficult.
Because it's busier and prices are higher?
Yeah, and people are, there's not enough time to mobilize, plan. So early is better.
Was this marked in your finance committee, when you guys had?
This is what I was gonna bring up. We had talked about some of these numbers, although they appear to be almost double what.
That's what I thought, that's why I'm like, I was expecting about half as much.
Right, we
myself.
were talking like 380, I thought, or somewhere around there. What changed or what got added?
I don't know if those were his estimates or Mark's estimates.
Well, that was very preliminary in terms of work that we would do, but when we sat down with Mike and his specialist, Area 10 really needed to be done as well, so that was twice the space, basically.
Oh, I'm sorry, the earlier estimate was probably just for the flat area. So I wasn't sure what numbers you were referring to.
But it does, to not do it now would just be penny wise and pound foolish.
Because it is 1, 2, 3, and 5, that one would have been a little bit closer. to
That
what
would certainly
you
would
guys
have
had
been,
looked
yeah.
at. Yeah.
And 10 is how old?
I believe it was at 92.
So all of these are about 92.
Um,
Or 1, 3, 5, or 1, 2, 3, and 5?
Yep,
And
that
10.
one, that single-story area was redone when that addition was put on. I believe that roof was put on at the same time. It would make sense. It appears to be about 20, 25, or 20-something years old.
I don't think that we had 10 included.
No, I know the numbers for 1, 2, 3, and 5 equate to about, the numbers that we were preliminarily doing.
Did you have a chiller included too, or no?
Yeah, that's only on Area 10.
Any other questions?
What's an NDL system? It says relative to the warranty, the 20-year NDL system warranty to be issued by the manufacturer. Were you looking under total estimated probable cost of all base bids? I just don't know what NDL stands for.
I'm not sure what it stands for.
Oh, okay.
It's a manufacturer's warranty. I'm not
Right.
sure. That's the acronym. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the acronym stands for.
That's okay. Okay, now when it says a warranty that's issued by the manufacturer, I'm assuming that that is relative to the products that are being used and not necessarily associated with the installation. So is there a warranty relative to, I know that there, just from personal experience, having a roof done, you can have, if there are issues, you can have the roofer say, well, it's the product, and then you can say, the manufacturer of the product say, no, it's the way it was installed.
Mhm.
So, where does that fall? If
Well,
all
we
of a
can-
sudden we have this tremendous leak somewhere and it's gonna cost us $50,000 to fix it, where does that liability fall? Is
Well,
that covered?
that's specified that will be part of the specification, so I can go over exactly how we want that phrased. It would be typically, everything by laws is warranted for a year.
Okay.
Workmanship, materials, everything. So, certain products you can get extended warranties, the 20 years, so it'll be less valuable each year, because obviously there's a depreciation of, yeah, so it's 19th year. If it fails, it's you have 1 year of life to put up in it. Usually any manufacture or any installation issues become very evident within the first year. We could extend that if it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So we can get very specific if you'd like about how you want that phrased. If there's concern, but it's in the book. We write it,
Okay.
so it can say whatever we want it to say.
Okay.
Certain things are standard, so there'll not be any cost relative to it. If you wanted a 30-year roof, that can be written in, but each additional costs increasingly more once it gets kind of past what a standard would be. But again, if there's concern about how it's phrased, I'll be happy to review or modify that any way the district would care.
It's just a lot of money, want to make sure we're covered.
Sure, sure.
Lisa, NDL is no dollar limit.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Appreciate that.
So when we go to bid, can we go with, okay, because you've got it broken down 2 different ways. I want to make sure that that's how we go out for it. With and without the chiller acoustical screen, because it's saying to install an acoustical screen around the chiller unit is $90,000, right? We're going to have vibration curbs put in the line
Yes.
item before, so
Mhm.
that should help with some of the noise.
Yes.
It's going to be a
That's
newer
inside.
unit,
That will definitely help the inside noise.
and it will be a newer unit. I mean, I don't know that, how can we measure how much noise for $90,000 are we going to
Um,
say?
It's an acoustic screen will greatly cut down any noise. I don't know what the value of.
So does the screen go all the way around?
Oh, yes.
And so if it's 10, can we just do it on one side where the houses are, because the other side's basically a parking lot? Is that
That's
an
possible.
option?
That's certainly a possibility.
Does it just go around it or on top of it? Is it like?
Around it.
Just around it?
Mhm.
it's been
Um,
Yeah,
So-
and we have a similar screen over in the middle school, and it's worked really well, because obviously we didn't
Oh,
want
yes,
that
that's right,
noise
right over here.
there. So just our experience with this is it's a really good thing to do, and we have, gone from door to door to door with the neighbors when we've had issues on this. So this has been a long-standing issue. So my recommendation to the board is don't do this halfway, because if you want a perpetual complaint from the neighbors because we've gone and replaced all this and it's still as loud as it was before, that's a concern, and the neighbors, have been by and large understanding, but if I live next to that,
But there are no
that
neighbors
noise.
on the east side, they're all on the west.
No, that's the
You-
chiller that they hear. So it's the same chiller, the same place. So as Mike said, we went over all of this.
What do you mean?
You
it's-
put in a chiller in the same location as it is now. It's the noise from this, where the chiller is now, that the neighbors have complained about. So
Right.
I'm.
But
Karen's
we're-
not denying that.
It's
What
on the-
she's
What she's
is
saying is if
one
you're in
side.
the parking lot though, you don't live there, you're in the
Correct.
parking lot.
And
So
noise
do you
usually-
need to
yeah.
go on all 4 sides of the chiller is what
That's
you're
exactly
questioning?
what I'm saying.
Right. Do all 4
There-
sides?
There's
Well, there
homes
are
on the
homes.
south and on the east, not on the north, not nearby, because there's a big building, and not on the east. So the
There-
north and the east, there are no homes.
There are
Within
houses on the south.
the south and
South.
the
In
west.
the west.
But
Well,
the west, there's like
the building is 45 degrees to the site, so south. I'm
Correct.
just saying,
So
it's hard
southwest.
to know which.
Well, if you're up there, you can see where the houses are, right?
Mhm.
And if you're facing the parking lot, there's no houses. And there are houses, yes, to the north, but they're about a block away, so I suspect that's not an issue. I would think that it would be
Oh.
the new homes right behind the
Mhm.
building, and just to the south and to the west.
So
So if it's a partition, right, that's how
it would probably be
I see it.
three sides.
Well, I think 2. Cut it in half.
Um,
if I'm looking at the building like this, there's homes here, and there's a house over here, and there's a fair amount of space here, but there's a block before there's homes here, and there's forest over there. So why couldn't you build your, I'm assuming this is your unit, do something like that?
Oh, that's certainly possible.
Do we have any way of knowing, Mike, how, you know, decreasing the number of sides to it is going to change the
We-
amount of noise? I mean, there
You know
should be
how-
something quantitative, some measure, like
When
how
they-
much noise does one unit of like this
Well,
put
the-
out, and then when you put one of these acoustical
Well-
screens around it,
Will they
there's,
be able to do like a decibel level reading? They
yeah,
did
but-
that at SIAI, you know, when they were doing the trucking overnight in Burr Ridge, so I'm assuming they can do something similar.
Oh, yeah, it would gauge the noise
Right.
level.
And then
So-
someone would give us an estimate on what this would cut it down to.
Well,
I'd like to
Um,
see the level on a new unit and not the unit that's up there and compare it with that.
so the acoustical enclosure, does a couple of things. One, it's sound absorption, so it has panels that, so if it's a whole enclosure, it reduces the noise being emanated before it goes out. So if there's an open side, it can't kind of contain that, it will, or it won't reduce the amount of noise. The second part is that it reduces the transmission towards you by the wall itself. So there's noise reduction and there's noise transmission. So it kind of does both. So the one, if you don't do it on all four sides, it won't absorb the noise before it gets released. So there's more being released, theoretically.
Right.
But certainly the shielding part, if you just want to block that way, it,
Again, I think $90,000 is a lot of money for a shield. And so, and that too, you said in there is taking the chiller on and off, or is it in the one above it, the 65,000? Which is to lift the RTU in place on vibration curves on
so
the, which is the removal of the chiller. This says to install an acoustical screen around chiller unit on the roof at $90,400.
mhm. So the line item right above it
Removal.
is the isolation.
That's lifting the roof area, right, the 65?
No, I think it's lifting the roof area, and I'm not sure, does this include?
Oh, this one actually should include that number. So there's some, no, I'm sorry, that's removal of the unit. Oh, well, that's actually removal of 2 units and
Okay.
reinstallation. There's another unit over here
on area 5?
But
on area
that's a-
10.
Okay, so this one's on 5 is 50,000, and on 10
So
is
this
65.
one is that one.
Okay.
So this also includes the cost of removing
Taking it off
and
with the crane and putting
reinstalling.
it back on,
Correct.
basically.
So that has the screen cost,
So which is the
Yeah.
noisy one?
this one.
Okay. So, like I said, if you were to do something like that, I mean, noise, yes, it's gonna project out if there's not a membrane around it. I mean, I understand, sure, it would be more, but so, I guess then a breakdown, how much is the screen and how much is the removal too? You've got it together. Maybe the screen's 20,000, maybe putting it on and off is 70, I have no idea. So if we had broken down better, maybe, we could have a better, make a better decision.
I believe the screen itself is in the 50,000 range, 55. The estimator didn't break it down that way, so I'm kind of interpreting some of his numbers.
Okay, so now we're saying the screen isn't 90,000?
No,
Screen
the
is 50,000?
removal of the unit,
Understood.
reinstallation of the unit and the screen is the 90,000.
Okay.
To install to do all that work and put a new chiller is $65,000 more.
Right, I'm totally lost.
Right,
there.
now, okay, that's not what I heard at the beginning of this conversation. At the beginning of this conversation, I heard the lift and replace was 65 grand, the screen was 90,
Oh,
which
this
is, I
one.
think, why you went where you did with the whole thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, since that the new.
That's a new chiller, I'm not even
Yeah,
down on that
so
line
the
yet. I'm
65
there
is
still.
the other unit on the roof.
Understood, that's to lift it,
And take it off.
and then
then
put it
re-put
back if we so deem necessary. And the 90 grand is, we're back to the
Is-
90,000 being the screen then.
The screen, so there are 2 units on roof area 10.
Understood, on roof area 10?
10.
Okay,
One, the 65 is the smaller, is the other unit, the air handler. Take that
Okay.
off, put it back.
okay, the 90 includes the lift and replace of
So the 90
The
includes
noisy one.
lift, replace, and screen for the chiller.
Even though it just says install the screen?
No, I understand.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm agreeing. I mean, would it help to get more details next time we see this bid?
Absolutely.
so.
And
Okay.
included in that is the actual ages of these roofs, if you will, and the ages of the chillers. Because there's several chillers then, right? There's several units, there's 2 units on the
2
building.
units. There's this one and that one. Oh,
Okay.
those are just some roof
And then,
hatches and
what
stuff.
are these?
This is a mechanical unit, and that's what's listed as that 50
Okay,
on roof area. 1, 2, 3, 5.
So-
okay.
So now we're talking about 3 items being lifted
And then there's one on,
and
there's a couple on 4.
replaced, not 2.
On roof area,
10, we're talking about 2, and then
Or
we
2.
also have one over
On
in the
five.
1, 2, 3, 5
and
area.
that's listed, I
Right,
think it's a
right.
50,000.
So we're talking about 3 items total.
Is that to replace or just to lift and put back on?
Lift and put back on. That one's newer.
Okay.
What do they use?
And that one's newer and doesn't make noise, and we're getting even a newer one. But we're
That one's
saying-
an
But
air
it's-
handler,
it's
not
a-
a chiller.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different
So
type
the
of.
chiller's the only thing that makes noise.
Okay,
What do they use, a crane?
correct.
Yeah.
And lifts it, and holds it in the air, and then puts it back right down?
No, it actually takes it, lifts it off, puts it on the ground.
On the ground.
So there has to be a pallet, and so it costs, the cost of keeping it, repairing, if they put it on the grass, the cost includes kind of restoring it back.
Okay.
The roof is put on, curbs are raised, the crane comes back and lifts it, and puts it back in place. And they have to reconnect all the electric, the gas, and whatever else is connected to that unit.
So that's what I would like to see, a better breakdown of, if we can get the decibel levels, I'm sure it would come to new chillers, right? Something, if it's,
yeah, I can get that.
I would think that it would, or.
I
it
like
would
the
be
current
accessible.
and the new.
Exactly. So we can compare. I mean, if it's a huge difference and we're putting in the vibration curves, because part of the noise could be from the vibration, I don't know, it just seems, either way, you have to take it on and off, so I understand when you take it off, there's such a big expense to put a new one on, as far as the chiller, but it's kind of hard, you know, we don't really know the age either. We're not exactly sure, so,
Well, either way, even if it's 21 years old, it has lived its life.
but we're not sure.
Well, the roof was put on in 91.
But the chiller,
Well,
The age of
no,
the-
the chiller was,
Not sure.
pretty much be sure was if this bought and put in the same time, but I mean, that can be verified.
I think we
Or
should.
it could be older, that's the
Or
point.
could even be older.
I think that's what
I think
Mark
that's
was
more the
referring to.
question.
But even if
is,
it's,
yeah.
was put on at the time, it's still at the end of its life.
Mhm.
But to go back, I mean, if we have to replace that chiller, if we do the roof work, we have to go back and replace the chiller in 5 years, or 2 years, or 9 months later,
Right.
there would be additional,
Probably 40,000 just to get it on and off.
well, yeah, we'd have to lift it on and off, and then, you know, the roof work, I think, would also be something, there would be additional roof work that would need to be done if you're removing the old one, you know, at least around it.
But if it's over 20 years, you know, like we all know, I mean, 20 years ago, OSHA wasn't all that big about, you know, who cared what the decibel level was on a unit at that time? So that's what I'm trying to figure out, you know, if it's old, it's probably really noisy, you know, and you said it could even be older. So that's why I would like to see what it is. I mean, it's really easy to measure. They've got machines to measure the decibel levels of what's up there currently and the new ones. And then we can make a decision, an educated decision on whether or not do we need the screens.
Does it affect, does the vibration and the sound affect, you know, is it something that they hear in the building? Is it an issue in the building? as well?
I can't speak to that.
The vibration was an issue in the building.
Inside
So we did-
as well?
We did make some changes to it, but I'm not sure how long that change will last.
But we're taking care of that because we're putting vibration
Sure.
curves.
Exactly.
It's a completely different
Either way,
number.
that's getting taken
It's a
care of.
completely different number.
Right.
Right. I just think it would be fine to leave this on the agenda for next month for an approval, but then
Get us
also,
information.
you know, just get the additional information. I don't think anyone's denying that the roof, you know, whether it would be within a year or two is at its extent. And, you know, just get the additional information and call it a day.
Is there any other information that the board feels it needs?
Decibel levels.
Right, you mentioned the
Yes.
decibel levels of the existing
breakdown.
chiller, the new one.
A true breakdown, what's the screen versus the chiller, instead of having it, you know, bucketed together.
I almost like to know the distance to the houses. And it seems like there's that big field between the building and the houses in the back. Plus, I think there's trees there. So I'm almost kind of thinking that it can't be that loud.
And how
I
often do
mean,
we
I
run
never,
air conditioner?
I never even heard it, and I drop off, and I'm there all the time. Maybe I've been just immune to it.
And then information about the age of it, as well as any other information that we need as far as the age of some of the roofs, right?
Please. I think that'd be helpful.
All right, and then I would just suggest, if we get that information, Mark, to be forwarded to us in a Friday packet. Mike, thank you.
Oh,
Appreciate you being here.
thanks, Mike.
Okay, next item, strategic plan recommendations. By way of background, just reminding the board that this emanated from, I believe it was last April in 2012, where the core team met and made a recommendation to the board that we needed action plans to operationalize our third strategy, which reads, we will set, monitor, and adjust the pace of implementation to preserve the energy and commitment of our staff in order to achieve our strategic objectives and mission. The board charged the Curriculum Council with writing those plans. The council started that task in May of last year and then picked it up at the beginning of the school year. Those plans were drafted and sent to the core team of an initial meeting that was in November. The core team made recommendations back to the council. The council amended the plans. The core team deemed it necessary to meet again, which occurred on January 9th. There were a few other additions, not a great deal of changes, but those went back to the council that met 2 days later, and those changes were incorporated. So what the board is getting today is the consensus document of the Curriculum Council and also the core team. And the other thing I would remind the board is that the Curriculum Council collected input from all staff members on these plans. They had opportunities to provide that both in person and anonymously. So there's, of all the plans I think we ever brought to the board, these plans have the fingerprint of more people than any others. So my compliments to the Curriculum Council and the core team for all the work and the research that went into writing them. And what I would like to do is just briefly go through each plan, and then I would certainly welcome Lisa and Mark. Lisa's serving on the Curriculum Council, and Mark on the core team had a lot of input into these, so certainly would hope that you would add any other information. Plan number one, end result one, is create a decision-making process that applies criteria to determine the merit of new initiatives prior to implementation. I'm not going to go through every single step here. I assume the board has read those, but basically this addresses a direct threat we had on our mission, is that you know, particularly in the last 5 years, that we've been very aggressive in taking on new initiatives, and that needed to be done with more forethought and consideration about things that are listed in those steps. So of all three plans, this one probably has the greatest impact in the degree to which you know, the workload and the so-called burnout, if you will, that staff members have expressed, we'll address. So that's that plan here. The next plan, end result number 2, this plan by far has been the point of lengthy discussions in terms of what this should be about. Now, if you look at the end result, which says designate a leadership function that manages current and future district initiatives, the reason that function is a very deliberate word, because neither the core team nor the curriculum council have the authority to designate a position or to hire people. That is that authority resides with the board. So that's why that term is used. So what you have there are action steps about how this would be done, 1 through 6. And these are recommendations for creating this function, which would be called the coordinator of curriculum and instruction. And that, just the term of how this job is described took lengthy discussions in terms of what we want this to be. One thing that is an overriding premise to this function is listed under attachment 1, where it says this position will operate within the current district curriculum structure and decision-making processes established by the strategic plan. Teachers will continue to be lead curricular developers and assessment writers for the subjects they teach. It was unequivocal among all the input that we received that our structure works, that providing the authority and the delegation to teachers to be the chief curriculum writers is not something we want to give up. And this was a point that took a lot of discussion to get clarity on, but it's important for the board to understand this. This position is not a director in the sense that teachers would no longer be responsible for the curriculum that they teach. And again, we have complete consensus on this from all staff members. The responsibilities, these are the best thinking of the core team and of the council in terms of what this person would do. These are not etched in stone necessarily. I mean, as time goes on, if this comes to fruition, things do evolve, but we felt that this should give the board a good idea of what is desired here. And then in terms of qualifications, obviously you can read this yourself, but the overriding concern here is that this person, one, have expertise in curriculum writing process, and that they have familiarity with districts such as Pleasantdale, that the experience was a really big deal for this. Minimum of a bachelor's degree, again, that's, I want to underscore minimum, and I think the rest of it's pretty self-evident. So that is this particular plan. And then the third plan is involving communication, and we feel we do have set up a pretty good communication system among staff members in terms of things that are decided by the curriculum council and all of that. But there were some things when we looked at this that we could do better. I'll give you an example. Step number 2 was just the sequence of when we schedule our curriculum meetings, because we felt there was, through experience, that the curriculum council meets, the last week of the month, then the building meetings are the first week of the month, content areas the second week of the month, and then team meetings the third week. So that sequence of activities really does facilitate communication. So it may seem like a small thing, but it was actually, we thought, something we should have thought of before. And the rest of it, again, has to do with just making sure that protocols that we establish are followed. Number 5, I think is something that will help a lot, that we actually create a spreadsheet of the various initiatives and responsibilities. This will help us monitor who we have involved in what, and kind of be cognizant of not overextending certain staff members. And then number 6 links back to plan number 2, where we think this function would have a big role in the communication both to staff members and to the community. Lisa and Mark, I will defer to you for any additional input.
I really don't have anything additional to say. I'm kind of curious to hear what, everybody else has to say about, these 3 action steps that have been written. I mean, I think we've based everything on what the charge was from core team. We've taken their recommendations. There have been a lot of heads, a lot of eyes, a lot of hands that have gone through this over and over and over again. So I'm very confident in what's been put together from a curriculum council member standpoint. So I am kind of curious to hear what everybody else has to say, including Mark Morelli.
All right, from a core team standpoint, when we met back in November and then in just last week, we pretty much concentrated on an end result statement 2. And that is the definition, the addition, however you want to say it, of potentially another individual. Okay. Whether it be on the board, in the neighborhood, in the core team meetings, the things that we hear, because the core team is made up of administrators, teachers, students, and parents. Okay, so I'm there as a parent, but also as a board representative. The items that I've heard all along, and this has been for the last few years, has been teacher burnout and
Out of the classroom.
teachers out of the classroom, teachers overextended, a lot of work, etc. So we really concentrated on this area because it really came down to, are we saying that, adding one person, whether it be part-time, full-time, full-time during the school year, full-time year-round, one person would eliminate those 3 items. And it hasn't been determined that, that answer is a definitive yes, and it hasn't been determined that answer is a definitive no. So part of the discussion centered around, would it be a full-time or part-time position? Would it be an employee or a contractor? And what would the length of the contract be, 6 months trial or a year trial? So it came down to what we would do is be open to the best available individual, and we thought that it would be a year in length because you really couldn't tell if something worked or not if you only did it for a 6-month partial year engagement. So that's really what it came down to. So then we sent it back and forged ahead with approving this, what you see in front of you. There were other iterations. I mean, I have other iterations here from earlier meetings, but this is the result that came out of last week's meeting.
So I'm confused. Is it a full-time?
That has not,
okay.
that has not been determined. It was left at that we would go out and get the best available person, and chances are it was going to be full-time for that year. So, gear yourself towards.
Because they're looking for us to approve, or you guys, you want
They're
us to
looking
approve by next month?
Correct, for us to approve the ability to go out and look for this individual. Okay?
Which could be part-time, could be full-time, could be temporary, or could be permanent. Gotcha. Could be
There's one.
contracted. Okay.
Right.
And
A
no
lot of
salary expectations?
no. I threw out numbers last week just for the sake so that people knew, kind of what we were talking about. I'm thinking, if this position is called a director of curriculum at any other school district with benefits, you're probably somewhere in there. And I'm taking just an average, right? You're probably somewhere in there, $125,000 to $160,000 a year when you throw everything in, including benefits. And that's just when you look at some of the schools around here that have a director of curriculum. Now, this is a coordinator of curriculum, so it's a little bit different because I'll mind you to pay attention to item number 1, attachment 1, the teachers are still gonna be involved in the lead curricular developers, and they're still gonna be the assessment writers. So the workload's still gonna be there, and they're gonna be on curriculum council, which means they're still gonna be pulled out of the classroom. So this person is really gonna come in and add help where they see fit, and probably act as a master coordinator, if you will.
So previously, it was Meg who was taking the lead on this, the charge, or was it Joni? On curriculum?
What do you mean?
No. I mean, Mark was,
Oh, it was Mark? Because I know when Kim Freislinger was here, she was pretty much in charge of the curriculum, that's how I
No.
understood it.
No, Kim
I
was in
never
charge of the
understood
students,
that.
Meg was in charge of the curriculum.
Oh, that's what it was.
That's the way I
That's right.
understood it.
That's right. So now, that's pretty much the same?
No.
That's changed?
No, in terms of curricular responsibilities, you know, we have, the curriculum council is the kind of plenary decision-making, but in terms of the
Who's
support.
leading it through for the teachers right now? You?
Well,
or-
it depends on what it is, but, I mean, I would have overall support for the council and overall, you know, responsibility for curriculum, but on certain initiatives like math, it might be Joni, or Meg is on language arts, Matt is on science, and, you know, so we do, then we have coordinators as well.
So this coordinator would kind of take those roles away from each of you? Correct?
Well, I don't see really any of that going away. You know, what's listed in here as steps are things that currently, you know, we just don't have the people power to do. And this was the discussion that we had is, you know, for a district our size, we don't have a curriculum person, which is or someone at least part-time that's just designated working on curriculum.
So then, are these position responsibilities enhancements in that we don't currently do them now because we don't have the manpower to do them, and a new person would start doing these things? Or are these position responsibilities that somebody else is currently accepting responsibility for, and they would no longer have to accept those responsibilities?
it's
Okay.
the latter. Well, I don't know about no longer accepting the responsibilities. It's certainly not the former. We're certainly not putting these things aside. You know, I think it's more the latter, where this person's gonna come in and assist with this area. Now, whether that means they're taking away the full responsibility from another individual, I can honestly say the core team did not discuss that.
And I don't think that was the intention here. I mean, this particular position is primarily a position of functionality. I mean, this person, from what I understand, is going to be somebody that will come in and act as somewhat of a project manager. Now, with this being a school, we would expect them to have some education background and some, background obviously in curriculum. But, they're really there to sort of assist the process, because the teachers right now, with the new initiatives that we have been undertaking over a period of time, have on occasion become very overburdened. And we want to make sure that, these processes or these initiatives don't get hung up because things are not moving forward as they should be. So this particular person, we're not taking anything away from anybody's jobs. This particular person will be there to sort of do exactly what it says here. They will set, monitor, and adjust the pace. It's going to give the staff a point person to go to. I need help with this. Can you help me with this? I don't understand what we're doing. What's the direction that we're taking here? So that this one person, this one point person, totally understands exactly what the initiative is. And anybody can go to this person to either discuss their issues or, have some help. Because right now we don't have somebody that's doing that. And when you don't have somebody there doing that, that's when things, don't tend to move as smoothly as they possibly could.
And let me also add that, there was never part of any discussion through any of this that, this would diminish the workload on an administrator. Never discussed, never intended. That's just simply not what this is about. When teachers are involved, like with the math committee or language arts committee, there's a lot of logistical work that goes into that. Researching materials, checking alignment from one grade level to the next, facilitating meetings. I mean, all that takes preparation and time, and that burden is, you know, when a teacher, right now, a math teacher is on the math committee with all this work, it's another big additional demand on them. So for someone to be designated to handle those logistics on a day-to-day basis provides a lot of relief for teachers. And that has been the focus of this, and that's where we think the value added is. Teachers would still be responsible, and they want to be responsible for identifying what needs to be taught and how it will be taught. That the support for materials, for training, for all of that, facilitation, just the logistics of setting up meetings, all of that takes quite a bit of time. And it's taxing on the teachers because it's in addition to their daily responsibilities.
This basically gives us an opportunity to streamline it and keep the teachers in the classrooms doing what they should be doing, and that's teaching. I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's a good thing.
But they're still gonna write and develop.
Right. Which is what they want to do.
It sounds to me like they're still gonna be doing the bulk of the work.
Right.
What, I mean, I don't really
The answer,
understand.
the answer to that is yes, they will be. And that's why, you know, at the end of the day, the core team never committed to, this is a full-time hire. You know, that's not the recommendation. The recommendation here is make that determination, go out and find somebody. There was discussion, not a majority, but there was some discussion of this being a try, yeah, let's try it. Let's try it and see if it really streamlines the workload on the teachers, because ultimately, that's who, you know, has to be in the classroom, that's who has to educate our children, and that is who is doing, as you just mentioned, a bulk of the work, and will continue to do a bulk of the work. So there is, you're absolutely correct, there is no, you know, firm commitment that this position will eliminate all the issues. We still have to wait and see that.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Lisa said that this person would be like a project manager. What is the project they're gonna be working on?
Well, we don't know, but we're talking about any district curricular initiative,
So we have nothing lined up, but we wanna hire somebody.
Well,
So
right
that's
now
what
we
I'm kinda
have, right now
curious.
we have the
Curriculum-
Common Core.
we've got Common Core
Course,
coming up.
not really a project though. That's something that everyone has to
But
do.
assessments
But
have
we're
to be
readdressing all the
readjusted,
assessments, and that's
curriculum has
where-
to be rewritten.
Our assessments,
vertical
not the Common
scaffolding,
Core
spiral
assessments,
Correct,
because
correct,
the Common
correct.
Core is.
To the right, correct.
There's a lot of work
So we
involved.
just redid all our assessments, so now we're redoing them again? Well, we don't
We're
really exactly
realigning
know.
everything to adjust to Common Core.
Okay, but we don't know exactly what the assessment is yet for the Common Core. Right? Is it, what's the assessment they're gonna use?
Are you referring to the state?
Are you talking
Like,
about the test?
yeah, what assessment are they gonna use? Are they gonna use the park?
Let me try to describe it this way. The curriculum work that, you know, we've got 11 years of experience of doing this in Pleasantdale here with the system that we have in place. We've always been running at full tilt. There are always things to improve. We've never been complacent. The board has been very demanding in terms of getting things done, having it the best it could be, reviewing data, addressing all any issues that and as a result of that, our curriculum is strong as probably any district and very well articulated. Our report cards are up to date and whatever. You cannot be complacent. There is always a huge workload out there. Now, in the next foreseeable future, we've got, well, we're finishing up with math. That was a tremendous amount of work to do in a short period of time. And just within the next 2 to 3 years, we've got language arts Common Core, we have science Common Core, we have social studies Common Core, we have changes in Spanish, we're always amending fine arts. So it just doesn't stop. So in terms of, you know, the issue that, you know, we aren't sure what the projects are. You know, I just listed, you know, 2 or 3 years of work to you, and you know that work will continue to go on. I can't see that ever going away. If you want to be a top district and give the kids the best education they can, you cannot be complacent. It never stops.
I don't think that answered my question though. I mean, I understand that we don't wanna be complacent, but my question was, I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. We don't know what this person's gonna do, but we wanna hire this person. And the teachers are still gonna do what they've always done, but this person's gonna kinda streamline everything. And when I looked at the we will set, monitor, and adjust the pace of implementation. I know we talked about this in the past, about changing that to say, you know, when remember I questioned Leandra, I said implementation of what? And they were like, what's just a generic term? So remember I said it kind of leads you to think that something's brewing, that we're going to be doing something, and it kind of sort of sounds a little confusing. So I thought we were going to change that, the pace of implementation of new initiatives, or something like that. Do you remember we had the discussion a couple of months ago?
I'd like to say it's crystal clear, but I gotta be honest with you.
Does anyone
it's
else
not.
remember that?
I do.
It's not.
You do remember?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, because remember, I know I said, what are we implementing? And everyone was like, well, it's just the word, you know, I'm like, well, but it's kind of misleading. It sounds like we're implementing something. So are we gonna go back to doing SVG? Is that what we're gonna be implementing? Because this person's gonna be a project manager. So that's what I don't understand. And another thing I had a question on is, what type of certification are you looking for?
There was discussion on that, whether it would be a type 75 or teaching certificate. And the end result to that was that the core team walked away with the understanding that a job description would be posted, people would apply, and we would make a determination based on the candidates that we got. Because there was no, we weren't going to walk into it saying, oh, you had to have a type 75, because that may eliminate people that didn't, that could be very well qualified. We also didn't want to say that you know, there's none needed, because that may eliminate people that did have that type of certification. So, no, there was no determination. There was discussion, quite lengthy on that, but there was no end determination as to one way or the other.
Mark, is curriculum directors, are those type 75s typically?
Not always. There's, in some instances, I mean, it is quite a range of options that districts have used and that I've seen actually used myself. It could be simply a teacher who's serving in that role, either short-term or long-term. The type 75 really is only an issue when you get into supervision of staff. Okay, so you could have people who could have a real wide cross-section of certification.
So this person wouldn't supervise,
No, we weren't looking at that as a supervisory position, no.
just lend support?
Correct, and that's why we didn't want to buttonhole ourselves into it, you know, that it was necessary, absolutely necessary for someone with a type 75, because typically people would pursue that kind of a degree if they were interested more like in a principal's position or some line position.
And would they
So
be?
the discussion went something like, if we brought in a type 75, now ignore type 75 or not type 75 for a second. Look and concentrate on a qualified individual. If we brought that qualified individual in as a type 75, then the assumption from the teachers that were in that the core team, and I'm assuming the curriculum council, the concern was that it was going to come down as more a dictatorship as opposed to they were going to be involved with the day-to-day writing of assessments, curriculum, and implementation of that, okay? So that was one concern. The other concern was that if you didn't put that on there, that you may get, you know, just teachers apply, and for that matter, it could be first-year teachers, which is certainly not what we're looking for. So that's why that portion of it was left pretty vague. That really was, because it was really meant more towards finding the right person with the right background that knew walking in that it wasn't going to be a dictatorship. They weren't going to have supervisory powers. They were there more as an assist to moving things forward and getting it done.
And would this be open to staff first and then outside?
That wasn't discussed, at least in
But you said
in our
that
meeting.
they should be familiar with Pleasantdale, so that's why I
Well,
said.
Mark just said that.
That's why I
You
thought
know,
it would have
I
to
didn't,
be
No,
insurance.
that's
A
not on
district-
here.
But I
A
know.
district like Pleasantdale, right?
That's not on
Similar
here.
to a high-performing district.
Right.
We didn't, you know, all the things that you're bringing up, we've discussed ad nauseum at the curriculum council, at the core team. So these are not new issues, and I'm not surprised you had these questions. And in terms of the main thing for us is that an educational organization has a certain culture, way of functioning that's different than, say, the private sector or whatever. We discussed that at length, that if someone coming in here to be successful would have to understand how that culture and that organization works. that was an overriding concern. And we were, very adamant that, that person needed that kind of experience.
Going back to your question, I guess based on what I just said, yes, they could, but they have to understand that they'd be giving up their seniority because this could wind up ultimately being just an external contractor job with only 1-year contract. At which point, they could be let go. So, yes, I guess it could be open to current teachers, but the risk would be on them to realize that this may not be ongoing.
So anyway, in terms of, how this would work for any of these action plans, so the board would, would ask, this is again up for approval next month, so the board either approves or doesn't approve. So if the board doesn't approve, then obviously it's a moot point. Some plans might be approved, others, I'm not making any assumptions. But if the board approved, whatever plans the board approves, then they would have to be assigned to somebody, just like we always do. And in that event, the questions you have on plan number 2, if it was approved, it would be assigned, probably to me in this case, but that'd be up to the board. And then the steps would be followed, and a recommendation would be brought back to the board is that for this function, I'm recommending X, Y, or Z, full or part-time, employee, non-employee, whatever it might be. And, that's how it would work.
From a board, I certainly spoke from a core team standpoint. From a board standpoint, should this move forward, what I would personally like to know is who's going to be on the interview team to accommodate end result number 2. And at the end of the day, I'm assuming that we would have a number of people apply to that. I would certainly love to see a resume or a background of the top 3 candidates before we move forward with any one person.
I personally I can see that we would maybe go for end result number 1, that would be 1. We'd have to go first, and then 2 would be at a later date. Because we don't know the initiatives, we're not really sure. How can we put out a job description when, again, we don't know if it's full-time, part-time, we don't really have what the true initiatives are at this point, except to assist, what I'm hearing, assist with the core curriculum, or be like a coordinator, but we're not really sure. I didn't hear an answer, what assessment are we using for Common Core, right? What Common Core assessment are we using?
Well,
or what exactly is initiative, because that's end result 1, is to figure this out, right?
And what if we just tweak someone's job there to kind of do these things? You know what I mean? What if do we have any extra staff that, we could maybe do that with?
Well, that's the point I just tried to say, is that if the board would say, yeah, bring a recommendation, assign this, bring a recommendation to us, then we would do that and say, I think this is the best way to, these steps here are the best thinking of the core team and the curriculum council for whoever gets assigned this plan to go about doing it. So yeah, there are a lot of options here. And the thing about this plan that's different than any other plan you typically get is that when you get to hiring someone, it gets to a point where it's not a consensus decision. It's a consultative one. Usually administrator makes that decision, makes a recommendation to the board. Whereas our curriculum decisions are consensus-based. So it is a little bit different in the sense when you actually get to hiring somebody, there's certain things involved in hiring that, it's a consultative thing. It's not a consensus where you would be consensus among, say, the whole core team or the curriculum council on who a person would be. You just wouldn't go about it that way. So it's up to the board. You can say.
I feel like if you do end result number 1 and end result number 3, you might not have a problem with 2. I think the problems from what I'm hearing was because we didn't have a true plan per se, or initiative, if you will. It was just kind of, they were always evolving, but it wasn't really set. And so, this, I like how, it's got all the criteria used to determine the new initiatives. It seemed like all these new initiatives were coming through the standards base and all this stuff thrown at, we were doing all the assessments and everything all at once. and we weren't stepping back and kind of going through this. So if you did that and then communicated it, do you think that you would need this person? Right? That, at least that's how
Well, all I can say is that what you're getting there, these three plans represent what the curriculum council and the core team believe is necessary to implement the strategy number 3. Now, it's certainly up to the board. You know, I think we should put it on the agenda for next month, and the board can take each plan one at a time and see if you want to approve it or not.
Now, it says you want to do this no later than February. Why is the timeline so, like, no later than February, when it's next month?
Why would
Are we in a
delay?
hurry for this? I requested the board approve the plans no later than February.
Well, we started this back in April of last year, so it's been like a year. So it's not like we haven't thought through this. And so, you know, typically, once you get the any plan approved, you know, there's a need for it, you want to go forward with it.
So you feel there's a need to hire an additional person to help with curriculum?
I think you know, you're asking my personal view, man. I don't have consensus from the curriculum council. I'm not representing that right now, but in my view, yes, that these plans should be all 3 approved and implementation should start like right away.
And when would this person, if they hire someone, begin in the fall?
In all likelihood.
In June?
In all likelihood, yes.
So for the next academic year?
Or would it be through the summer? Because isn't that when you do all your writing of your curriculum in summer?
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility.
I don't
It
think
just
how you
really
could hire
depends
someone
on,
without initiatives.
You
Well,
always
it's-
have curricular initiatives. I mean,
But they're not clearly stated.
if you stop working on curriculum, your district gets left behind. So there, I
Right.
mean, it might not necessarily be a specific initiative, like right now, it's Common Core. That's something that we're looking at. Before, what they were working on was, you know, the SBG. And so there's always something going on. There are assessments, there's new report cards, there's,
Right.
you,
But see, okay, number 5 here, create and maintain a spreadsheet that lists all the initiatives and responsibilities in order to ensure that no staff member is overextended. So when you do that, you might find out that, okay, this person needs help with something, but without, so who's gonna do that? Is that what you want the coordinator to do? Because then after that, once the initiative's underway, designate the responsibilities for reciprocal communication to ensure understanding of pacing, monitoring, and adjusting as needed for the staff. Reference job description of coordinator of curriculum and instruction. I mean, it just seems like you're hiring someone and you're setting this person up for failure because they don't have a clear job description. It's very vague. They're gonna assist, but you don't have it truly, you know, what their expectations are. So, and then once you go through one and you're organized and you have your plan, do you really need this? I don't know. That's where I question, is this need? I agree with 1 and 3 wholeheartedly, but 2, I'm not so sure that it might not be eliminated once this other work is done. I might be wrong, but it's,
You know, I think if you had somebody who had experience in curriculum writing, they would probably argue their value. You know, this is what we're seeing, or what the committees have seen as being position responsibilities. But I would be real interested to say, if we pursue this and we actually started to get in the process of hiring or interviewing people who had curriculum writing experience, I bet you they could tell us something more about the value that they bring to the district. I just suspect that.
they're not gonna be writing, they're just gonna be assisting.
Right.
But they've got experience with
Well, all of our
curriculum
teachers
writing.
do now because they've been doing it since they've been here, right?
Are
They've
any
been
of our
writing it
teachers
as they go
certified in
along.
curriculum writing or curriculum instruction? You know, I mean, do they have that
A master's
endorsement?
degree or-
Endorsement?
Is there an endorsement
No.
in curriculum instruction?
I don't know.
Not
is
per
there?
se, no.
I thought it was just you had master's.
A master's, do any of them have their masters in curriculum and instruction, do you know?
Many have their masters.
Well, I know
in-
that.
In related fields.
But, okay, my question is, do any of them have their masters in curriculum and instruction, do you know? I'm just curious, I
But
mean,
the thing is, if they do,
I mean,
think
there
it's
are, but
usually
it
in a
depends on where you,
concentration.
it's called different things, but I mean, there are many of our teachers who have master's degrees with a focus on curriculum. This might be writing, could be, you know, there's variations on that theme is what I'm trying to say.
You know, I don't know that there is a master's in curriculum and instruction that is a global, you know, you are now certified to be this.
It's not a
I think there is
state
a
level.
certification curriculum instruction. I'm pretty sure, I mean, you can Google it.
Well, I know, like I said, I know you can get your master's in it, but I thought it was in a concentration of a certain disciplinary area. I'm not sure.
Would it pay to have for next month the top initiatives, top 2 or 3 initiatives that are taking place over the course of, I want to say, let's say December of next year, which would include anything that's occurring over this summer and for the long term, as well as anything that we're preparing for the next school year. It would pay to have a list of a couple of those things. You know, the question out there is, there's, in my eyes at least, okay, there's 3 issues. The issue is overwork, teacher burnout, teachers not in the classroom. Again, it's one of those things where if this individual can make those 3 things go away, then it's well worth the dollars spent. The question is, can that happen? And that's where, you know, I don't know if the curriculum council could answer that question. The core team certainly could not answer that question last week. That's why it really came down to, let's post it, see what we got. We can, you know, if I was conducting the interview, I would almost pose that question to the individual walking in and just say, here's our scenario, because it was discussed. While there are many high-performing schools out there like Pleasantdale, it was discussed and determined that there are no schools out there, at least locally that we know of, that operate like Pleasantdale, and that is that have a curriculum council and that have their teachers all doing the workload that many districts have a director of curriculum doing. That was determined, that was stated, everybody agreed to that at court meeting last week. You correct me if I'm wrong, but those are facts as I've heard them. So the big determination is that the way we're doing it empowers the teachers to be better when they're in the classroom, but it does overburden them, it does overwork them. They do take pride in that work. I've heard many of them say that that has made them better teachers because of that. That has allowed them to know their curriculum more in-depthly than they would if it were just handed to them by someone. So there is a benefit to us, which ultimately would mean there's a benefit to the children. And they're the ones that are coming back saying, this position will help. I'm not going to deny that it will. I'm not going to say that it definitely would. That it would or wouldn't. But I'm saying that I am open right now to saying, let's see who we get when they apply for the job. I'm very interested in seeing myself the work history of the individual that would apply for the job that is in charge of curriculum yet not.
But how are we gonna post a position when you don't know if it's permanent, if it's temporary, if it's consulting, you have no salary range expectations?
No, that would be, I mean, if the board approves this, I mean, that would be brought to the board and say, look, there's a recommendation, and again, the steps are listed for that to be done, that it was not the job of the core team or the curriculum council to start talking about salaries or half-time or full-time or any of that.
I'd like to see
Then,
all
but
this
hold
stuff.
on a sec, because at that point, then I don't think the board could approve it unless they knew all that.
Right.
I wouldn't approve it and then say, come afterwards and tell me, oh, it's gonna be a 10-year contract.
That's what I'm saying.
So, no, that I would disagree with you on.
Now, let me state it again, because I don't think you're understanding what I'm
Maybe
trying
I'm
to say.
not.
Is
Help me.
if the board approves this plan,
Uh-huh.
that's exactly what we brought to the board, is to say, okay, for this position, it's recommended that it's either half-time or full-time, that it's a person in district, that it's, or, you know, priority to be given to that, or it's somebody to recruit out. I mean, all that would have to be spelled out. At
Right.
that point, and the board would say, okay, that's what, we approve that.
But that's not what you're
But
presenting
that's not
for
what
us
you're
to
presenting
approve.
for us to approve, so.
That's where,
Well, if you don't want this function, then don't approve the plan and the work won't be done.
Seriously, Mark, really?
Yeah, really.
That, you're not listening.
No, I don't
That's
think,
not
Mark, I
incorrect.
don't think you're hearing. I think what.
That's not at all.
Either
Well,
you
what we're
are
saying, here's
approving
what,
the plan
no,
or you're
here's,
not. I
here's
mean,
what we're
that's-
saying, no, that's not true.
Okay, then I'm not understanding.
Correct. What I think is being said is, if you want item number 2 approved, okay, not 1 or 3, but 2. If you want to approve, it's either approved as is, which means that there is no determination, so you post the job functions and see what you get, okay? And you can do it that way, you can do it that way. Or if you're coming and saying, well, no, I want to post it as full-time, then what I believe I'm hearing Karen say is, well, then make that part of this recommendation and back it up with why.
I can't see how we could approve this without knowing. We're gonna approve something that's gonna affect our bottom line, our budget. Could be 150, could be anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000. And we don't have a clue if it's permanent or if it's part-time, full-time, consulting.
Right, okay, well,
I
let's
need to
go
know
with,
that.
let's go with full-time, number 1, okay? And let's go with permanent, and they have a 1-year contract, and at the end of 1 year, you don't renew it.
And what
That's
kind
as good as, it's not permanent. So, I mean,
But-
those things happen in real life,
Right.
okay, so
Well, you
we're no
have to,
different.
because they're gonna ask. You can't put a posting out there
Right.
without
So we could post
something.
it, that it's a 1-year contract.
And salary expectation or range.
Or commensurates with experience.
But us as a board, we can't just give a carte blanche. You're telling me to just approve this and it could be whatever.
No, I'm not
'Cause you're s-
telling you to do that.
Well, that's what Mark's asking us to approve this.
No, that's not correct.
See, I'm looking at it as we're approving the functionality of this. We are saying that what is being presented here seems like a reasonable direction to go,
Okay.
to hire an individual. But what I think I'm hearing is that there might be board members who want to know more detail about what this would entail.
Comp-wise, contract-wise. I mean,
Yeah.
Karen's got a point. It's like you can't approve the position and then afterwards tell me, you know what, here's what I found out, it cost $1 million. But you guys already approved the position, so I'm hiring. I'm being absurd with that, but that's the example I think I'm going to use here, is that, you know what, if you want it, now come forward and say what it has to be. Try to narrow it down a bit.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of the feeder districts already have a person that's similar in this job description. So maybe we could see what, is theirs a full-time, what do they do? How do they help? And then kind of go from there. Like, if they've already invented the wheel, there's no reason we should be reinventing it. It's already been done. Let's kind of see what they're doing.
The difference that we're doing, okay, there is one difference, and that is, since the inception of the strategic plan, go back 8, 9, 10 years ago, we have had this thing out there called the Curriculum Council that invites administrators, teachers, parents.
Doesn't invite, it handpicks.
Okay,
Let's be clear.
then it has. Then it
Okay.
has on it. That's not my point. The point I'm trying to make is, my understanding of these other districts don't have that. They have that director of, that's why the school districts that I've investigated, that I've looked at, the position's either been director of or superintendent of.
Mhm.
The curriculum council is specifically coming back to us with coordinator of, neither director nor superintendent of. And the dollar figure I got is just looking at some of the websites from other districts and seeing what their comp is. That's where I pulled the number of 150. It's not that I know.
But those are the
that
directors,
that's-
those aren't
Correct,
coordinators.
correct.
And so,
And is
and
this
we don't
person
have
gonna
their
be,
job
and that's what I'm
description
saying,
or
is this
duties.
person gonna be different than that? I don't know.
I would feel much more comfortable if we had that before we approve it. Because it could go anywhere, I'm thinking between 50 and 150,000. And again, how do you know what you're looking for? I mean, you could get 500 applicants. Don't you want to narrow it down? Don't you want to be specific?
Yeah, the first decision that needs to be made is, do you want to pursue this function? And that's what this plan is about. Now, you said, if we did 1 and 3, I don't think we need 2.
Well, we don't know.
All right, well, if you feel that way, right, and the majority of the board does, then make that decision and say, look, we're not approving this, and so no subsequent work would go forth because you don't want the position.
The position isn't clearly stated. The responsibilities are, right, is what you're saying, the responsibilities are. But I don't feel but you're not telling me the position itself, it's the responsibilities. You don't know if it's full-time or part-time, permanent or temporary. That's what I need to know.
So then you would say, if you feel that this is a necessary function, then you'd say, okay, we'll approve this, and then the steps are, the first step, now look at the first step. This is define the responsibilities and qualifications for the coordinator of curriculum, and there are suggested prototypes. That's what the core team, so when this is assigned, that you'd have an idea what this is about. So if you wanted that to go forward, then whoever this was assigned to, and again, I would assume it would be myself, but that's up to the board, is that I would define that, I would determine whether it should be full or part-time. I'd bring back a recommendation to the board, and before we'd even go out and advertise for this position, I'd come back to the board and say, okay, here's my recommendation in terms of how we should do this. Here's what this person should do. This should be either part-time or full-time. I think we should make this, give preference to internal candidates. I think we should open it up to, an intergalactic search. Here's what I think the salary range should be. All those things would be brought back to the board before anything was done. But first, the board has to decide that this is a function you want.
Why can't you do that other, what you just said, define it before we approve it? I don't understand why you couldn't do that.
Well,
Because basically you're telling us, you're being more specific.
Well, if the
You can-
majority of the board doesn't want this at all, then the board has to say, look, as a majority, we don't feel plan number 2 is necessary. So if it's not necessary, then don't approve it. And then I'm not going to spend time bringing you a recommendation of what this person should do and all the rest of it, because it's very time consuming to do that if you don't want the position in the first place, or the function, I should say. So
Well,
that's
I
what
don't
you have,
think we're
that's the first step.
not saying it's not necessary, we're saying, let's see, lay it all out before we determine, is this something that we do feel is necessary?
I can just, for myself, I don't know that I would agree with that. I certainly wouldn't stop anybody from wanting to go, that direction, but if I felt this was necessary, would knowing the salary then say to me, oh no, that's too much money, it's not necessary? Would a recommendation that, well, we're gonna need them full-time, would that make me then say, if I believe in this position, that it's now not necessary? Would having a qualification perhaps be determined that instead of a bachelor's, it's a master's, and then knowing that somebody with a master's is going to just naturally cost more? Would that then say to me, I don't value this anymore and no, I don't want it? For me, I feel like those are outcomes, and they are natural outcomes of saying that somebody should assume this function. I don't know for me if knowing those answers would change an opinion as to whether or not I value somebody performing this function in District 107. To me, they're just the semantics that would go along with it.
Yeah, I guess I would just want to see more of a description, what exactly are they gonna do?
This person could very well take, if you had a position, they could maybe do what's in one. They could take care of the value, to figure out what these initiatives are, right? So basically, this could be part of, figure out what the impact of the budget is. That would maybe help the teachers, but that's not how this is being presented. It's like one comes first and then two. I mean, it just seems to me that if you've got someone who's going to coordinate it, let them do this work. In one, if you're looking at Plan 1.
Thinking the item number 1 that you said about the salary, I think it would affect my decision, because.
And that's fine, I'm just saying
I know,
for me,
I know, but
I
I
don't
mean,
know that it would for mine
If someone that
necessarily.
really knew what they were doing, had 25 years doing this, 20 years doing this, really knew what they were doing, just based on 20 years in the industry and what we've seen from, if you're with a district for X amount of period of time, the raises or increases that occur, a person would waltz in this door at $200,000. You're saying that wouldn't affect whether you wanted to call that person a coordinator, a director, or a superintendent, based on that price tag? And I'm not
I don't
saying,
think that's what I said.
you
Mark.
said price
I
wouldn't
said
really
if I
come into,
valued this position,
then price
and
wouldn't
I
come into play.
felt that this position would provide value to the district. I don't know then if you turned around and said to me, well then, that person would cost 200,000, just a number that
Mhm.
you picked.
Right.
That I'd say, oh, well then, then this really isn't any value to me anymore. I don't know that I could do that.
Understood. I
That's all
guess
I'm
where,
saying.
where I'm struggling, and we make, where I'm struggling is the difference between what I'm picturing in my mind as a coordinator versus someone who actually is doing the work. I still personally struggle, and I brought up last week, I still personally struggle that we're saying that, okay, if you just on estimate have, first through 8th grade, kindergarten and preschool, and let's say 3 classes for each, so let's, for the sake of argument, say there's 30 teachers involved. We're saying that 30 teachers outside the classroom, 30 teachers workload, 30 teachers burnout can all be eliminated by a $200,000 position, $150,000 position, $50,000 position, then I'm agreeing with you, it's well worth it. I'm still personally not convinced that one person's gonna walk in the door and eliminate the burnout, the workload, and keep the teachers in the classroom. It was brought up last week, okay, we make decisions as a group and core team, so this is being presented to you, but yes, that is a concern. So,
And
if
I
you're
don't
telling me,
disagree with
if
you
you're
there
telling
at all.
me for $50,000 that the problem's not gonna go away, but for 150 it is, then I'm voting 150, because it's just gonna make us a better school, okay? But if you're telling me, it's a $75,000 position, and those 3 issues are not gonna go away, then I'm saying, you know what, then maybe the position's not needed, and I'm leaning more towards what Karen is saying.
But the thing
And
is,
so I
though,
can't make that
Mark,
determination, because I don't know what we're looking for yet.
but it goes back to with presenting position responsibilities that we're also unclear as to whether or not any of these position responsibilities are going to assume any of the responsibilities that have been currently performed by any individual who's been involved at all in curriculum writing, whether that be a teacher, whether that be an administrator, or anybody. So,
Well, we're saying, no, there is an assumption on the teacher part. Go look at attachment number 1.
no, that they're still going to be.
Correct, they're
yeah,
still gonna do it all.
Absolutely.
They're gonna do it all.
So that's why I
Absolutely.
don't understand how this is gonna help. I guess that's my biggest problem. I don't
So-
understand what's gonna make their life less stressful. If it's just coordinating and doing a spreadsheet, then,
Then we go the project management route, which means it doesn't have to be full-time, it doesn't have to be an employee. But if they're going into the curriculum writing, then, yeah, that probably would lend itself to, over time, becoming a full-time position with the school. So that's why, I'm kind of, I'm agreeing that, I'm interested in looking at this, but I would like to make that determination based up front of knowing a little bit more about, hey, geez, this is gonna be full-time, this is gonna be long-term, and here's the salary range I'm looking at. And at the end of the day, because my guess is, in my mind, I'm picturing what the dollar figure is gonna look like, picturing what the background of the individual is gonna look like, and I'm picturing the importance to the school, I would love to see the top 3 candidates as opposed to, here's who's great for the job. So, you know what, we could look internally, but maybe we do want to enter the active search. Could be wrong.
Is there anything is there anything more other than what we've heard in the sense of possibly narrowing down qualifications, better defining salary structure, experience, some of the things that, Mark, you said? See, I feel like we're in a catch-22. If we don't have those things, do we have board members who can make a decision? If we do have those things, do we have more board members who can make a decision? Are we going to find ourselves in a situation where not having that information is almost going to hinder the board from being able to make a decision on it? I don't know.
And you have 2 board members that are absent, that are
2
missing
boards,
this
right.
entire conversation.
Right.
Hopefully they'll watch the video. Because to hear what's going on, what we're talking about.
I say bring it, I say leave it on next month and
As
chances
an
are-
action, or have it on as
As
a
an
discussion
agenda.
item again?
I think
It
it's
is
an
a
agenda.
discussion.
A little more information, and then we can do an action the following month. Still plenty of time to hire someone, if you hire
I mean,
someone
if we
in March,
anticipate
by
having
June.
wanting someone on July 1st for the new calendar year, or even June 1st to include that extra month, I mean, it's not unheard of to be able to do that in a month, 2 months' time. It's not unheard of, Leandra, whether we believe it or not. I mean, we have teachers resign
You don't have
a
to
week
convince
before
me.
the school starts and we can
They're
fill
hired
the
in 2
position.
weeks, yeah.
So, I mean, it can be done.
Mark, I don't have it, I'm just trying to figure out for the board as a whole, how
Well-
do we move forward on this? What do we need
The answer is
next month,
okay,
you
so,
know?
so a little bit more refinement, salary discussion of some sort, and make it an agenda item, not an action item, a discussion item, with an action item attached at the end, if it can move that forward. That's it.
Right.
I didn't hear anybody ask for anything else.
Well, that's why I brought the question up.
I know,
that-
that's what was answered. Those two things, and make it a discussion item with an action item attached.
Does anybody else feel that they need anything other than that? I mean, I don't, Lisa, obviously you've served on the committee, and Mark, you've served on it, so you have both kind of been privy to some of the behind-the-scenes conversations, so you probably feel very comfortable with the information that's here, and not necessarily feeling that there has to be anything more other than what's been brought up tonight.
I just, if you can clarify for me how this is going to help the teachers not be burned out, that just by doing a spreadsheet and helping, give me more background information on how that position is going to help that person.
I'm just curious because on attachment 2, I mean, there's a lot of work that went into trying to spell this out so both the core team and the board would have an idea of what this person would do. So there's A through G listed there.
They're assisting, guidance and support and assisting. So you tell me, is that full-time, part-time? You tell me, who's going to do the initiatives? Is this person, or they're gonna take the initiative? So we're gonna do the initiative, so what's your time frame for this? Who's gonna do end result 1 to give a better description for the new person when they get hired?
Well, let me try to explain it another way. If the board is not interested in this as a function, then don't approve the plan. If you're interested in this as a function, you approve the plan. It doesn't obligate the board in any shape or form. What you're saying then is, okay, commence these steps here. So the next thing that we would get would be the firm responsibilities and qualifications. It would be, this is full or this is part-time. All of that would be subsequent work that would be done.
Who's
If the
gonna
board
do-
is not, I mean,
Who's doing
I'm
number
hearing
1?
from you,
I'm asking a question.
I'm hearing
who's
from
gonna
you
do
that you
action
may not
number
just
1?
be in favor of this at all. So if you're
No, that's not
not,
what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm asking you a question. Who's going to do action number 1? Is this the new person going to do it? What comes first, the chicken or the egg, Mark?
I mean, the
1 or
first
2?
plan,
End result number 1.
End result number 1.
that would need to be assigned, and I would say that if we had that function, that person would be the logical person who would be assigned to. But the board still has the prerogative to say, look, we don't want plan number 2, we approve plan number 1 and plan number 3, and those will be assigned to existing staff. That's how it would work.
But what is your recommendation for 1? To do plan number 1? What was your, you presented
Well,
one
when
to us.
these-
What was your, in
You
your
have
mind,
to
who
look
was
at
going to do
when
1?
the whole process of writing action plans to implement a strategy is that these are interconnected. That when the curriculum council identified the 3 end results and 3 plans, we said, in order to fully implement this strategy, we feel that these 3 plans are necessary. We have consensus that these 3 plans are necessary. We're bringing you the consensus thinking of the council and the core team. So all those people are bringing you our consensus. Now, it's your prerogative as a board member to say, thank you, but I think 1 and 3 are fine, but I don't think 2 is a plan I can approve. That's certainly a prerogative. Everybody knows on the core team and on the council that that may happen.
So back to my question, from the core and the curriculum, who did they envision doing plan number 1? The new position, was that the plan?
Well, you
Or
can-
was it for the core curriculum too?
The
Did they even
discussion was,
discuss it?
oh yeah, that these are interrelated plans, and you will notice cross-reference to each of these plans. You know, it would make certain, I mean, it would make absolute sense that if you had a person in this function, that they would be the person this plan would get assigned to. But if there's not a person in that function, it would be assigned to somebody else, just like any other plan would be.
Here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing you say either approve this function or don't approve it, but I'm not gonna do 1 through 6 action steps until I know it's approved, because it's time consuming. And I'm sitting here looking at 1 through 6, and 4, 5, and 6 you certainly would not do, okay? 1, we have the help of attachment number 2, and 2 and 3 are fairly simple. Based on your knowledge of the district, you're the superintendent, based on your knowledge of the curriculum council, based on your knowledge of the workload of the teachers, you'd be able to come back and tell us with relatively, you know, maybe a half hour's thought at most, you know, nothing major, I'm not looking for a book, whether it had to be full-time, part-time, whether it had to be an employee or we could use a contractor. You'd certainly have an idea of who would be in charge of the individual, and I think the only extra thing that's being thrown on there is give me a salary range. So you're saying, well, I can't do 1 through 6 until I know this is approved. Number 1, the majority of it's already been done on attachment 2, you can look right down there. 4, 5, and 6 you wouldn't do, so we're really only talking 2 and 3, and those are not time consuming.
Do you want the plan or not? I mean, that's all I need to hear.
So I want left hand.
You think that you'll approve this or not? So, I mean, that's all.
Mark, I don't think
think
this
people are
board
saying
can
they
tell
don't
you.
know yet.
I think people are saying that
They want more information.
some want more information, well, those who have spoken up feel that they want more information. And without that, I think you're gonna have a board next month where, as Gina pointed out, we have 2 board members who aren't even here, who may not be able to weigh in on it. So we're talking 5 board members who may be able to comfortably, you know, vote or decide upon this, but yet there's more information that some people need. So I think what I'm hearing is, I don't think any of us can promise you that we would or we wouldn't, but I think the one thing we can say is having more information at next month, I think could facilitate a more educated, decision as to what we want to do. So what I am hearing, that I heard, I said, Mark repeated, is that we want to hear about more information about what the responsibilities and the qualifications would be. If they go beyond this, what would that look like? What would a reasonable salary structure would be based upon the functionalities as they've been defined? Do you see it as full or part? I mean, that's what's been coming up all along. So I think what this board is saying is, to some degree, we would like you to provide us information that would fulfill action steps 1, 2, and 3, even though we don't know if we're going to approve this or not, because without that, there are some individuals who probably won't be able to make a decision. That's what I'm hearing. So I think that's what the board wants.
Okay.
Okay?
So Mark, does that mean it goes back to curriculum council and then back to core team?
No,
Okay.
no, the core team and curriculum council, they're done. This is their best thing. But I'm just reiterating that, and it's not a small point, that if people are agreeing with what Leandra is saying, then you're at least at this point saying there's virtue in this function, and there's not a majority of the board that is saying that we just don't want it.
No, absolutely. I never said I
Okay.
didn't want
Hear
it.
that from anybody.
Yeah. We just want to know more.
Okay, anything else we need to talk about here?
I do want to be clear though, next month though, we would have, each end result statement would wind up being a separate action item in and of itself. We are not approving, we would not be asked to approve all three of these together, correct?
That would make sense.
Okay. That was the only thing. Okay. Statement of bonds?
Okay, we're just, at this stage, affirming that the board wants to move forward with $1 million of abatement from fund balance. And what we did is, I thought it'd be useful for the board to know the impact of that, so we contacted William Blair and got that estimate. So that if this goes forward, the tax reduction on a house with a market value of $300,000 would be $174.14, and for a house with a market value of $500,000 would be $297.73. So I think that would be appreciated by taxpayers. The other thing that I wanted to remind the board, this is very good news because I don't know any other districts that can say this. If you look at the schedule on the subsequent page, which gives our entire debt service, that by 2018, we'll be debt-free. Now, I know that's very un-American, and particularly in terms of the state and federal government, that any public entity would actually be debt-free. But that's really an unusual circumstance for any district to not have any debt whatsoever. In fact, I couldn't name you another district that can say that. And at that point, the part of the tax rate for bond and interest will be gone entirely. So that's not a small accomplishment. The board, I hope, feels pretty good about that.
Just to Karen and Mark, I mean, I know you made the recommendation for the $1 million based upon looking at a roof project that would cost about a third of what the proposal is right now. You have no numbers in front of you, obviously, and I think, did I read that the roof project would be paid out of working cash? No.
No, fund balance.
Fund balance, fund balance, fund balance. Are we, do you feel?
We're really talking about, Karen, you correct me if I'm wrong, we're really talking about an additional $370,000. When we met, the original number you had budgeted and had been planning for was the $380,000 or thereabouts. This is taking on almost, double that, and then some. Because would I change my opinion within the finance, what do we call it, team? Finance advisory? Okay, would I change my opinion? No, I wouldn't, because when we look at the numbers that we've done over the last couple of years, the 500, the 750, and now the million, it seems that at the end of the year, we've always had a couple $100,000 balance. I mean, when we present the budget, we present a one-for-one expenditure to receipt. The reality is the expenditures don't exceed and or even meet the receipts. They're usually shy by anywhere from a couple $100,000 to $500,000. So
I agree. And Catherine's always doing a great job of being
Right.
very, very conservative on the estimates of the expenses. And then two, what happened, I'm hopeful that what will happen with this roof, when we do put it out to bid, that will be substantially less, like we were with the last edition or the last work, the chunk plan. The mason, thank you. We were way under what STR came in with. So that's kind of what I'm hoping too.
So, and then the other thing that you have is, we deliberately, a few years back, made a determination to look at these numbers individually on a year-by-year basis, as opposed to putting out there, hey, we're gonna wipe it clean and free $750 a year for the next 10 years. And that was so the board, or the board at the time, could make a determination each year whether that number needs to be increased, decreased, or for that particular year, eliminated altogether. So if for some odd reason it comes in higher, than SDR's projection. If for some odd reason our receipts are less than our expenditures, this is a one-time event that can be changed next year to a lesser dollar figure or even zero.
Right.
So my recommendation would be that I'd still be comfortable with it.
Okay.
So we'll put this on the consent for the resolution next month?
Mhm.
Okay.
Wait, can it go on the consent? I thought after, didn't you tell us last time for something this much money, it shouldn't go on the consent agenda? It can go on the
Yeah,
consent?
oh, sure.
agenda? Okay, I just wanted to
Right.
make sure.
All right, we'll go on to item 4, status of compliance with Freedom of Information Act binding opinion. This is something that has come up this past month, and I'm going to defer to Council Terry Hodges to kind of speak as to its reason that it's here on our agenda this evening.
As you will recall, the board discussed the binding opinion of the Attorney General to the FOIA requests for test scores that had been appealed twice up to the Public Access Counselor of the Attorney General's office. And the board complied, per the consensus of the board, by providing the FOIA requester with the data. And that consisted of test scores with no student names, placed by cutting into vertical strips the test scores for, and this was math concepts, correct, and math computation.
And composites.
And composites. So my understanding is 3 separate envelopes were labeled, and the scores for every one of the students, and this was 4th grade, correct? 4th grade were put into each of the envelopes, and the district complied and sent those off. I received a call from the Attorney General's office right during the Christmas holiday break, between Christmas and New Year's, and was told that the requester did not believe that the distribution of the test scores in that format complied with the binding the binding opinion of the AG. I requested that the AG give us time because I was away, I knew Mark was away, and he consented to have us consider this right after the holiday break. So last week, the AG's office called again to determine what we were going to do or not do. And I questioned at several levels, we had 2 conversations over 2 different days, whether the binding opinion had clearly specified, what manner of paper distribution we were supposed to do, and whether or not they would view us as technically out of compliance. The assistant AG went back to his supervisors because he wasn't certain of the answer, and initially told me that as he went back and looked at the binding opinion and that the way the requests seemed to have varied a little bit, in the various appeals up to the Attorney General, he was uncertain whether the binding award was written so specifically that the way in which we granted access to the scores somehow violated the opinion. When he called back the second time after discussing it with the supervisors, the conclusion was that because the binding opinion had referred to strips, that semantically his supervisor, the acting Attorney General, Public Access Counselor, viewed strips as being horizontal, meaning that for each student, we should have provided 1 envelope with strips that would have included all 3 scores going across. I then tried to clarify very precisely that if we didn't now go back and redo it, whether we would be viewed as not in compliance with the binding opinion, and the answer to me was yes, you would be viewed as not in compliance. You know, I immediately talked to Mark, superintendent, and we drew in Leandra, and I advised the Attorney General's office that the board would take this up at the meeting tonight, and we would get back to him. The board had clearly, in my mind, determined when we decided to comply with what we thought was compliance to the binding opinion, had determined not to challenge that, because there is a procedure under the Freedom of Information Act to appeal into court, to challenge a binding opinion, and that had not been the decision. We felt that we were going to comply in the manner in which you chose to comply. So this is a new twist at this point in time. And that's where we're at. You have to decide now whether you will redo the paper strips.
I have a question. This has been in closed session before, why is it now in open?
Jerry, can you speak to why we are discussing, why it's
I
being
mean, I have no problem with it
discussed
being an open session, but.
in
I'm just
open,
curious.
and the caution for the board, if the
Before-
discussion should at all move toward a litigation?
Before, right, we were really concerned about whether the position that the board would be taking, and the discussion was in closed session because it was related to litigation.
I get it now.
And now, I mean,
Okay.
in fact, the appeal time, if we had decided to challenge the binding opinion, that expired already. It was 35 calendar days, and that expired earlier this week.
So then what are we discussing? Why aren't we just sending the strips?
I think we're discussing, if I heard correctly, we're discussing whether we want them or not.
Because
have
if we
to.
don't,
She
then we're in
decided not to.
violation, right? And we've
Correct.
decided that we don't want to appeal it, right? So,
Correct,
so
but,
there's
but
really
if you
nothing to
don't, there is a
discuss.
separate section of the
There
Freedom
is.
of Information Act that provides if you don't comply, and remember, we felt we were in compliance, now we're being told we're not. If you don't comply to what's newly defined, then the requester has the right to go into court. And the Attorney General always has the right to go into court too, to
Which could
enforce
cost
the
us
open
more
meeting act.
money.
Yeah, defensively,
But
correct.
again, that discussion as to whether or not there is, whether or not the board wants to entertain
An appeal, we
possible
decided. not to.
litigation would then be a closed session item, correct?
No, we already decided we didn't want to do that.
Right, right, whether or not there's litigation will depend
On the action subsequent
on
to.
the requester, exactly.
If we
Yes.
don't supply it in strips, for crying out loud, I say let's just do the strips and turn the page.
Okay. That's true.
Yes, thank you.
I agree. It needs to be over, it needs to be done.
I'll go. Okay, I'm gonna ask you all to, you know, during halftime, I read this thing. I had 2 halftime Sundays, so I went through this in great detail. So I'm gonna ask you to, I read these general information about FOIA, and I'm very interested, not so much in what it states, but rather in what it doesn't state and what it might imply, and what the potential results would be, okay? First of all, I guess I'll go on record and say, I don't think the state realizes how small a district or how small class size we are, and how it may or may not be easily capable for an individual to associate individuals with individual records. And if that were the case and certain things were to leak out, how that might subject some students to, or some children, to be bullied or ridiculed. You know, if the Illinois Council doesn't really care one way or the other about children, then you ought to let them come to one of our board meetings and tell the parents and get it in minutes, because I do.
Mark, how
And,
could
but
you
hold on,
just-
I'm gonna
let
go
him
through
finish.
the whole thing,
Okay.
and you can tear it apart after I'm done. I'm gonna ask you all to go to page 2. Under general information, who can file a FOIA request? Anyone, period, anyone. Anyone on earth, any person, group, association, anybody, okay? What I know today is that we have a parent requesting information. We have a parent in our district. We have a parent with a child in our district. We have a parent with a child in our district who attends our school. The parent, I'm assuming, is also a homeowner and a taxpayer, okay? And this parent may have the best intentions on earth. I don't know, because on page 6, we're not allowed to ask, a FOIA officer, and I'm part of the board, so I'm abiding with the FOIA officer. We're not allowed to ask what the intentions are. It's just the request came in, all we can do is give. If we wish to ask, maybe that's a topic for a different discussion, and we directed the superintendent to call the individual and request information about what this is necessary for. What I'm concerned with is that the parent or the individual may have the best intentions on earth with gathering this information, but what's to stop somebody from Iowa from calling and asking for information? What's to stop somebody from Mexico from calling and asking information about our kids? And you know what? I'm all about protecting our children and their rights. And you know, if it's protecting a test score of an individual so that they don't get bullied or ridiculed, and I know we're talking about redacting, but the reality is we have small class sizes, and it wouldn't be very difficult to call a few friends and family, get a couple of, you know what, Karen, you have your opinion, I'm just stating mine.
I didn't say a word.
But your look told me everything, okay? All I'm doing is, you know what, I want to prevent John or Jane Q. Public from being able to ask for information, and us setting a precedent that if we did it once, we've got to do it again. You know, if you look at page 5, okay, what information must the public body withhold, redact? You'll notice that nowhere in there does it even say anything about names. It just says Social Security, driver's license information. So we could release this information with names, and what if somebody comes by and asks for that information? We got to go through this whole thing again, and because we set precedent once, we may have to abide by it again.
I thought the original
If
request
you
was
go
named
to,
today.
now I thoroughly understand what this request is, but we could have another request that dictates something different. So I just soon say no to them all. And I mean, at the end of the day, if the worst thing someone can say about me when I die is that I tried to protect children, I can live with that. Because I've stated once and I'll state it again, if you want information about your child, I'll fight side by side with you to get that. If you want information about my child or about someone else's child, then I say go ask the parent. And if they don't want to give it to you, too bad. And that takes us to item 2 that's on here. If you go to page 12, and you go to personal information, that, if disclosed, would constitute clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy unless the disclosure is consented to in writing by the person who is the subject of the information. I mean, at some point, and again, whether it be this well-intentioned FOIA or some future one, perhaps at some point we have to let parents know that this is taking place.
Can you just tell me, okay, what we decided to do?
We did.
But no, you guys decided, I did not agree to it.
Fine.
There's 3 numbers, 3 groups of numbers going across, and that's it, no names, but we could do 3 on a strip of the test, and she knows the counts. Well, we gave 3 different envelopes, but if we go across, there's no identifier over in the count, it's just number, 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 test score, test score, test score. She knows the first one is the math, second one's computation, third one is whatever. How, and we know there's 80 of these little strips of paper, how is she gonna figure out, I don't understand how how they're gonna be able to tell who it is.
Because
She's-
John and Jane Q. Public may say, you know what, I don't want it that way.
What do you mean?
Because what we're doing is we're setting a precedent by sending the information out. All I'm speaking for is myself. I'm saying no.
But because
And
you're
I'm not gonna defend
concerned,
it. I
you're
already did.
concerned that they,
Correct.
because you want to protect, you're saying that you won't do it
Correct.
because you want to protect the identity of the child. I don't understand how the
What if I
identity of the
start
child could be
sending out
found
there?
out.
What if I start sending out there that a child scored a 2?
Okay.
Doesn't matter if I know the name or not. I just, hey, somebody in 3rd grade scored a 2, or somebody in 4th grade or 5th grade or 6th grade or whatever grade scored a 2 on whatever test. I don't know. I'm making up the
We
numbers.
see that all the time. We get
But-
that information all the time.
Who gets it?
When we get the scores, we have the lows, we have the highs. When we know what the top scores, the bottom scores. What are you talking about? We don't know.
That's fine.
But how can, if you've got 80 strips of paper with 3 different numbers, how can you tell me that we are endangering the identity of a child? If you're saying that she could call and get that information.
You mean if the requester?
If the requester were going to call, why would they ask for this information if they're going to go through that trouble to call everyone? Oh, what did your kid get? I mean, I don't understand how we could possibly give, with what we had talked about giving the first time, and then the second time it was into individual envelopes, how can that information possibly, how can anyone figure out who it belongs to?
That's based on this. Again, I
Statistically,
don't wanna
80
set
different
precedent by
strips of
saying,
paper.
hey, we're gonna do this. So what you're doing, what you're suggesting is that we look at every individual FOIA and sit down and make a determination on who gets what and who doesn't get what.
Mark, did you see the 12,000 sheets of paper that were given before? There was all kinds of test results on that.
Correct, and we got ridiculed left and right for running up one hell of a legal bill on that.
Well, because we didn't ask for,
Okay.
to narrow it down, but I'm saying, but you're concerned that information could get out.
Correct.
That information could have gotten out. How is this any different? We've
And I'm
released
not, and
information.
you know what, I don't approve it then, and I'm not
I
I'm
didn't
not
approve the
comfortable
12,000,
with this.
but you would rather jeopardize possibly being sued. If
By who?
The Attorney General, well, here, let's see, I think it was page 7.
I don't think
I've
the
got it.
Attorney General will sue us.
Well, you
I
wanna
think
take
it'll
the
be up to
chance?
you.
We've
Yeah,
already
yes,
spent.
yes, I do actually.
Well, I'm not prepared
Because
to.
if they wanna come
Page
here and
8.
they wanna say, yeah, I'll give away student information,
Impose a civil
let them go
penalty.
ahead and say that. Because right now, they're hiding behind a paragraph and a couple phone calls from our legal counsel.
What
The
if-
individual couldn't even answer the question. Oh, geez, I don't know, here's what it says, I gotta go ask my boss what he means. So yes, I would take that on, and I'd let the Attorney General, Miss Madigan's office, come here to this school district in front of these parents and say, here's the information that I'm allowing your school to give away.
We've already
But there's
given
no
far more
identified
information.
That's on this. What I'm saying is let them identify the rest of the information in the paragraph. Nowhere in there, they're saying no social security number, I want to say driver's license number, but it appears that you could give
But
the name
isn't it
away.
protected by the Student Privacy Act or whatever that is that you referenced several times in the letters to the Attorney General?
Correct, we thought everything
It
was
is
exempted
protected.
by the student records law, but now
And
we
they're coming
know
back saying that
there
that's
are
not the
exemptions
case.
to that.
Right.
Right.
So if this person asked, I want all the information with, I don't want you to redact anything, you're telling us that now we have to provide that?
No, I'm telling you that
You'd have to
now
go
we're
through that
gonna
fight
have
again.
to go through this
You'd
all
have
the
to go
time.
through that fight again.
Yeah, I mean, at
is
the
what
very
I'm hearing.
least, we know we can redact student names.
Okay, so let's
But
just redact the
anything else
names
that
and
you
move
think
on.
might identify a student and you're uncertain of, we will just have to make an educated guess in the future now. Because the AG's binding opinion basically is telling us that student records information in its entirety is not per se exempt. I mean, that was the guts of this opinion.
Who gave us, where did this document come from, this 12, or however many page?
The one that's included. in
Yeah, the
this
frequently asked
packet,
questions.
Mark.
That just off the website of the.
I'm just curious as why we didn't get it months ago, when we had all these questions, and now we're just getting it now. It probably would have saved us a lot of time, and a lot of talking, and a lot of
money.
everything, and maybe
Well,
even,
In addition to the potential that court ultimately could impose a civil penalty of between $2,500 and $5,000 per FOIA violation, which we would be in if we didn't, if we don't follow through, because they already said we're in violation. If a public body does not respond within the time limits, it cannot subsequently charge for reproduction, blah, blah, blah. So I mean, already, why would you want to open us up for more fees? That's why I said, that we're giving 3 sets of numbers. I don't
You
understand
know what,
how.
I'm one of 5 people here, I'm just saying no. You're saying yes, you're saying yes.
What are you at, Leandra?
The difficulty that I have with this is that we are a public body by virtue of who we are. And yet, we are probably the only public body whose service involves minors. That's the part that concerns me. FOIA, and with everything that comes out from the Attorney General's office regarding public bodies, it's just, we happen to be one. Just like, you know, Lipinski's office, or anybody's, you know, who happens to serve in the public sector. And this is a one-size-fits-all law. And it is. And, you know, I mean, I can personally say that, you know, I can remember when I was teaching in public education and all this FOIA stuff came down. And you start thinking about everything from your grade book, to the tests that you give in your classroom, to the quizzes that you give, to everything. And it is, to me as a teacher, it is very unsettling in my gut to feel that I could potentially have to release all of this information on these kids who've done nothing but come to school. Some of them do their best and don't succeed. Some of them do their best and do stellar work. And now because I happen to teach in a public school, and we fall under this entity of a public body, now have to release this information. So I can say I am very unsettled about that. I think we could debate forever whether or not, if we provided the information in terms of strips, would it be likely that all of the students could be identified? Probably not. Is there more of a potential that they could be identified? Definitely yes. And I think that in providing the information the way we did, I think we virtually eliminated that opportunity of identifying who with what score. We still provided the data, but it wasn't connected now to a
Right.
student. And the other thing it wasn't connected to where you could see where a student who scores in one category, what the corresponding test is in the other. So, you know, I get all that. But I can say that I am very unsettled, I am very uncomfortable with providing any type of data where I think that that data should be held personally between that child and that parent. And just because the student happens to go to a public school, we're
Okay,
going to go ahead
but
and
it-
release
But
that.
in this situation, would you say yes or no?
I would say no.
Okay,
Yeah,
and,
I
and,
would.
and keeping in mind that we had all kinds of test data in those 12,000 sheets of
I
paper.
understand that.
All kinds. And then keeping in mind in the past, my child's whole grade information was
And we
put
know
out
that was a
there,
big snafu.
and the
Yeah,
names were
I hear
on
ya.
there. The names were on there. It was
Right.
clearly identified.
No, I agree,
I'm not confident that
That was a
this is.
mistake that was not intentional. If
Correct.
we give this information as a board, if we allow this information out as a board, we're putting our stamp of approval on it and saying, yes, mom and dad, it's okay for this person to have these test scores.
But,
And
but
that's
they're not
wrong.
identifiable. But we gave it all before.
We gave all the information, it's just not in strips. We took the information we had, we cut it down so that it would be virtually impossible to identify who the individual students were. And that, I think, as the school board, is our responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. We had no control over what Dr. Wick accidentally did, or
What
what
about the
he
12,000 sheets we gave out that had all kinds of test scores on it? All kinds of test scores.
did. Students' names?
They were redacted. We're not giving names with this. We're
You know,
not,
I guess
we're
I
not
have to go back
proposing
to
to
the
give
origin
names.
of why this was, you know, we've been forthcoming with these FOIAs, and this was the one exception where this was specific kids. The request regarding the 10,000 pages plus was a categorical request for all the information. This was for a specific group of kids, and that was why originally this was denied, because it was so specific that it could be identified to those particular kids. So there's a very,
No, it could have been
there's a
identified
clear
be-
distinction
because
about
someone said
that
that
FOIA
it was in
request and the
alphabetical,
other
someone
one.
said that it was in alphabetical order. Had someone not said that they were in alphabetical order, no one could ever even figure it out. You've got 80 scores, and they could have been jumbled anyway, so that's why we said take the names off and cut them up. I don't understand how you've got 80 different numbers, nothing else, but they're in a row so that you can see computation, you know, whatever. I don't understand how you feel that that could endanger, that we could possibly tell who the person is. And that if the person that's requesting this information was going to go and call people to see what their scores were to figure this out, then why is he or she FOIAing the information to begin with? Obviously, that's not their intent.
I have no idea what
So you
their
would
intent
rather jeopardize the district as a whole for a lawsuit?
You know what, Karen, for me,
I'd rather be safe than sorry as far
Yeah,
as.
I'd rather
the
protect
students'
children, yes.
information.
Yes, I would do
It's
that.
what-
Tell me, how do you feel that that's
what
going
we're
to jeopardize
Because,
children?
because what
It's
you wanna do
challenging
is,
the
you
Attorney
want to
General's
make,
office to
you
take all their
wanna be
decisions.
judge and jury on who gets what information. That's, again, I said, this individual may have the best intentions. The next person may not. And by saying yes to this, you're setting precedent that you're gonna say yes to the next one too. And I'm saying, you know what, when they get that detailed, say no to them all. And let the AG, the Illinois AG, come here and tell us, okay, on our cameras, to go out to our parents and say, yeah, we're gonna give it. Too bad, so sad. Because I'm willing to bet a majority of parents don't even know about this. Not the request, not the FOIA request, but the fact that, hey, there's a lot of information that can be requested about your child. And all
That's
that
right.
has to happen is your name gets
That's
crossed
right, there's a
off.
lot of information
Correct.
that the law states
Correct.
that, because we're a government
Correct.
entity, that
Correct.
we are required to give.
Right. And it
And
also
you wanna-
states that
and
we
you
can
wanna
tell
fight
them.
the law.
Yes,
You
I
think
do.
the law.
Yes,
okay.
I do.
Even though there's
Yes, I
no
do.
way that the personal information, that the student can be
Yes,
determined.
I do. Yes, I do.
Okay.
And that's my opinion. Vote me. You know, tell me no. I'm fine with that. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm fine with that. And I said from the get-go, if the worst thing someone can say about me when I die is that I tried, I can live with that. I can live with that. I'm okay with that. So I'm fine.
I guess I don't understand logically how you feel that a child can be related to these numbers. How a individual child can be correspondent with the numbers. I don't understand how that could be.
And there are smaller districts than ours that would have these issues, and I mean, 80
Okay.
kids, that's a lot of kids. It's not
Statistically,
that small.
to narrow down individually, it makes no sense to me, and that someone's gonna do that, instead of just getting, and this is what I said 6 months ago, give the information and turn the page. I mean, why are we're spending more and more of the taxpayers' money, then we're gonna open us up, it's the law.
And others said, don't give the information and turn the page.
Obviously, that's why we're
But you
still
want your
here.
page turned, but my page not turned. And I'm
It's the
saying,
law.
Yeah, but we
and
have
I'm
the
saying
law
I
to-
don't care, you know?
The law telling us what we need to do.
It's fine.
Which is
That's
true,
fine.
but until somebody challenges the law,
Right.
nothing
Oh, for
happens.
crying
No, Karen, but it's the truth.
It's,
It-
Oh,
it's,
so now
you
you
know-
wanna take it on, and that's what you're saying, that you wanna take on
I'm
the
saying it's
AG.
a waste of
What
taxpayer
I'm
money.
saying is
We're
that
wasting the taxpayers' money in our district,
in your opinion,
right,
absolutely.
I think
That's
we
fine.
are. I mean, it's
That's
told,
fine.
there's no names on these
that's
things.
fine, that's fine. And that's if the AG shows up here.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one then. So now we're gonna send a letter, or we don't need to send a letter, because now we're not gonna comply.
That would be my
Maybe
opinion.
we should send a letter saying we're not gonna comply, so that parents know that now we could possibly be sued as a district.
Yeah, you could do that
I mean,
too.
it's crazy. I mean, it's,
and you know what, and there would be some parents out there who would probably say, oh my, you know, they should have just complied, and there'll be parents out there who would probably say, oh good, somebody is standing up and trying to protect this information. I just don't see this as a win-win situation for anybody. There's always gonna be the opinions. There will be opinions out in the public on the decision that is made, there are opinions within the board. Does it mean that that those who feel that we should comply is right or wrong, or those that feel we don't comply are right or wrong? No, that's what we constantly debate. You know, I respect everybody's opinion, but in the end, you know, I have mine. I truly don't want to comply. That's where I'm coming from on this one, and I you know, we'll see where it goes. And I feel it's important enough to challenge the information that goes out on these minors. That's where I'm coming from.
and Lisa, you're on the same opinion, is that it?
Yeah, I think it's our job to protect the students, you know, the students' rights. They are minors.
And I'm all for protecting students' rights. However, I
Absolutely.
don't think that we're giving any identifying information. So I think that
I don't
we're not
understand why
looking
the
out for.
information that was given is not usable.
Well, why
We
didn't we
gave
just comply
information, we felt we
initially
were
when-
in compliance, we gave the information, I don't
No, we
understand
didn't.
why.
I went back and looked at the request, and it did say strips.
And those are strips, little square strips.
Those are not strips. A strip is 3 numbers across.
The government couldn't even define what is. And you're gonna tell me they can define what a strip is? A strip is whatever you determine it to be. I mean, get the dictionary and tell me that a strip is 3 numbers across, X length by X height. Get that
Well,
dictionary
it's
and
not
show
gonna say
me
3
that.
numbers across. It's-
Well, okay then. Then what I gave was a strip of paper, 1 number on it.
We gave lots of numbers in the past, that's what I don't understand.
I mean, they were all given in envelopes of, these are 80 scores in computation, these are 80 scores in,
It almost seems like we're hiding
So-
data. Like our data must be so bad that we don't want people to know what it is.
No, let's
that's
go,
not
let's,
what
no,
we're
no,
saying.
no, let's
That's
talk
not
about
what
our
we're
data.
saying.
Let's talk
I
about our
don't get
data.
it.
2
No,
years ago,
Mark,
2 years
Mark,
ago, we
that's not where we're at
determined.
right now.
I mean, it just
Mark.
feels like we're hiding something, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Well,
But if you
what I
guys are
am
fine with
hearing
it, then that's, you know, it's.
is not that that there are people here who want to withhold it because of data. They want to withhold it because of students.
Right.
That's what I'm.
And
I
I'm
mean,
more
that's-
than willing to
that's
talk about the
crazy.
data.
What I'm
If you
saying
want to
is-
ask
is
for that to
there's
be a
no
topic,
identifying
I would
information,
love
so
to
I
talk
just-
about the data.
I just
Because it's
don't-
actually very good.
I just don't think
How
that,
do you know? Did you see it?
yeah,
Well, I see our total rolled up.
you know,
When it gets presented to
and
us,
I
I see
don't
our
believe
totals
one
rolled
number I
up.
ever see up here, to be honest with you, because I don't see the actual thing. Anyone could change numbers at any point in time. I don't believe one number
Okay,
that I
you-
see.
okay.
I mean, I'm
All right,
serious.
That's fair
It
enough.
could be
That's
tied
fair
up.
So
enough.
it's just,
That's
We've
fair
caught it
enough.
before. We've caught the numbers.
That's
before.
fair enough.
All right, so what I am hearing, although there is no formal action, in terms of a discussion, is that right now, for the board members who are present, the majority feels that we have complied, and that is where it's going to stay. Even though the AG has told us we haven't, we're going to stand with
I
this.
need to advise the AG of that. I mean,
So we
That
don't
was the
have a
request I
formal
had from
action
the
though,
last
so.
And could you clarify for us what our potential
Risk?
exposure and risk is now?
the requester has a right under the Freedom of Information Act to bring in an injunction action if they believe we have not complied in the manner in which the binding opinion ordered us to. And that would involve defending a court action with the potential of the monetary damages that you noted earlier, Karen. And in addition, the Attorney General, under its own powers in Illinois law, has the right to bring a court action to enforce the Freedom of Information Act. And that's basically all that law says. And can bring that suit in either Sangamon County or Cook County.
And Terry, have you been in any types of these cases? Could you give us a little insight as to how long are anticipated monetary potential damages?
Well, these are fairly rare. And I'm trying to determine of the cases I've read, we don't have a lot of Freedom of Information Act court opinions in Illinois to begin with. We just don't have a lot.
Because people comply.
Yeah, or they challenge the opinion, you know, which we decided not to do. We deliberately didn't do it because we felt we were complying. So this is an odder circumstance to now have what we viewed as compliance now being told by the Attorney General that it wasn't compliant. So I don't think there are a lot of cases like this. But in general, there aren't. I mean, when you move into court, and I assume it would be in Cook County Court, the requester doesn't have to file right away. You know, there's timelines, but that doesn't have to be immediate. And anything in Cook County Court could take years.
Could they just hit us with a fine? Let's say you're in violation here, you know.
Those have to be willful violations.
Well, this
And the
sounds
argument,
willful.
well, but the argument here is we felt we complied. We weren't being willfully in avoidance of the law in the first place. We're just disputing whether we complied in the manner that they are now saying we should have complied.
didn't the
I
actual
mean, we
request,
didn't envision we weren't complying, right?
didn't the actual request though say not just strip of paper, but 3 numbers on one strip? I mean, didn't they?
I thought it was pretty specific.
Do we have, can you pull up the actual request, Mark? Can we get it?
The request varied. We even traced that. I mean, that was part of the difficulty.
What was the initial
From,
request?
you know, the first request for review, the second request for review, and then the reply of the requester to one of our responses.
Well, I
So
think
they
it
all
was because
varied
once
a
we
little
denied
bit.
it, then they said that this is what we would accept, if my memory serves me.
Right.
So they would accept they said though the 3 numbers on the one piece of paper, is that what they said?
It said strips.
Containing anything?
Well, the math scores, but it.
Scores
you know,
plural? So that would be more
Well,
than
I don't
one
know.
on
I'd
piece
have to
of
go
paper.
back
That's
and
what I'm
look
trying to
at that.
figure out is,
I'm
I
pretty
didn't
sure
think it was
did.
clear when I looked at it.
Okay, so.
Can I just correct everyone? Because
No.
we're all talking
I'm
about.
sorry.
Okay, then I'll wait till it's Sasha.
If you could you wait? Thank you
No.
very much. Terry, in terms of the question that Karen asked, have you been able to provide Karen and thus the board with all of that information? Is there anything more you can add to what Karen had requested specific to
Basically,
what
it
happens
could go on
now?
for a long
What
time and
steps
cost
now?
thousands and thousands of dollars.
Cool.
is this
Potentially.
Is this opinion already on the AG's website? You had said that they
Oh,
upload
yeah,
findings.
it's up.
It's up there?
It's up.
And so now if we don't comply, will they also put that up there? Will they, you know, I mean, is there gonna be like a story about us?
Well, I've never seen them put stories.
I mean,
up
you know,
there.
I mean, like,
The only
like
thing
the
you're
next
making me
step.
thinking is whether they now do some kind of revised finding opinion
So they
to
might-
clarify. I don't know
okay.
what they do in this case.
But it's already up on the AG's website?
Oh, yeah.
Terry, is the discussion that has been held right here enough for you to share an opinion with the AG's office?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
though there's no formal action?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have all you need in order to give them a call this week, or?
We don't need
Okay.
a formal action or a roll call or something stating.
I'd like to go on record saying that I think that we should comply.
I would like to too, that's why I asked. Is there a way that we can,
I
so
mean,
that
I
it's
don't wanna
reflected
be
in the
party
minutes?
to a
I would like it in the
lawsuit.
minutes.
We don't have
You
it
don't
on,
have an action
we don't have it
item.
on an action item,
Could we add it next month?
but I do think when we talked, Terry, I mean, we felt that the discussion would,
Because, okay, just in the minutes, I would like it reflected that I would
Yeah,
like to.
when you type them up, can you make sure
comply.
that my name is in
Thank
there
you.
and saying that I feel we should comply? I don't want
And
to
give the
just come back.
information, that I don't feel that we are endangering, that there is any potential for student identification by what we have proposed giving. Thank you.
Okay, then on the second issue is in terms of communication to parents whose children's data was requested, any communication, I mean, there was one communication that went out telling them that we received this FOIA and that we denied it, and so that's the last thing that they've heard.
Well, you're still denying it, so I don't see why we need to discuss it. Right?
or provide any information.
No, why should we? If you're not giving up it.
I don't think we need to provide anything. Anybody else?
No, I don't
I think
think
it's a
so.
sense mark that nobody feels like. Okay. We added then the Hinsdale District 86 Ladsley withdrawal resolution. Karen, you said there were a few things that when you looked at it that you thought warranted discussion.
Well, I was curious, now they said that there was no, currently they don't have any students enrolled in LADSI, that they didn't feel that, that there would be any additional cost to us, but clearly, I mentioned to Mark, I forget how many are in the pool, maybe 16 or 17 different
districts?
districts, right? So there's a certain amount of overhead, so it is, I would think that even though, yes, you know, and Mark said, well, because they have no students, that it wouldn't affect us. I think it will affect us adversely, because obviously we're gonna have to share a little bit more of that, the overhead, right?
The cost.
The cost, right.
Because when they withdraw,
Right.
their monies won't get,
Put into that pool per se, right. And so this is the
Right.
second school in 2 years that's withdrawn, and,
There's no indication of any money, so I'd almost like to know, how is this gonna impact us?
Well, if you look at the Exhibit A, District 86, you know, worked with the LADSI administration in order to, because they knew this would be a concern of districts. And what we do know from our experience with the withdrawal of District 181 is that it had a neutral impact. Because the, you know, the IDA money that is in the pool from them being part of the co-op left, but so did all the services that they received.
But
So
this-
there were corresponding cuts in staff and so on. And that was also investigated here with District 86, and so you have that information in there.
But they say that they didn't use any services, so, isn't that what
and
it
it
said?
kinda, it was
They only,
contradictory.
it was only for purchase services only,
Right.
so,
That-
the
it's-
money's going, but the services were never there, so I just would like to know how is it gonna impact us monetarily? Like, are our fees gonna go up because this district has dropped out, and if so, how much? And then I had another question, but I'll save that for you to answer the first one.
You know, again, it's not anticipated, you know, similar to when 181 withdrew, that this is going to have any significant impact on the other districts.
So, it's not gonna
I mean, I
cost
think
us
it's pretty
a
clear in
dollar
there.
more.
That's what it said.
I mean,
It
it
says
does say
minimal.
that.
It said minimal, I thought it said.
But wouldn't you go down to
We'll have
the
no
last
material
paragraph
financial education
on that same page? Wouldn't the 18 million be divided by 15 now instead of 16?
Yeah, their operating budget,
So I mean, it's gonna have an impact of
absolutely.
some sort.
That's what I said.
How many districts? 15 now?
I think that's what that next line says. Look at that next line under.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
the
it's
remaining.
because,
Because Lansing consists of 15 remaining.
of course, they're gonna tell
I
us
mean,
that it's
because
not
it
gonna
says-
affect us, because they want out.
That's-
But
Yeah, but who prepared this document?
I think it came from them, from, 86.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
developed in cooperation with
Lansing
the
though,
Lansing
wasn't it?
administration, yeah.
You know, it just seems like, okay, so this is the second school in 2 years, maybe, this is something that we need to look closer at. You know, let's see what our, difference, because I have no idea what we paid last year or the year before to Lansing compared, you know, from when they left, and we can never really, you know, compare it because every year our number of students change. I don't even know what kind of money we're getting from Lansing when we host them. They said that they're still gonna host, or get rent from them.
Yeah, like, do we get rent from Lansing?
So, what you're drifting into is the benefit our district receives from Lansing. The agenda item is
Benefit or
approval
expense?
of the withdrawal of 86. Now, do you not want to approve the withdrawal of 86?
I don't know that we have
Mark, I
much
think
choice.
we can discuss it.
Right.
I think we can discuss it as long as it pertains to Lansing, and it's part of the documentation that you gave us. I had highlighted it right there. It says District 86 will still honor the rental agreement with Lansing for the early childhood program in the district-owned kinder care building, which led me to think, gosh, if they have a rental agreement, do we? Like, and it just, I feel like we don't get any information really on this whole Lansing deal, like very little. It's very filtered, it's very little information. I don't know how much, like, they say it's a minimal, the amount of money that it's gonna cost each new district, each remaining district minimal. What is minimal? Minimal to you might be $100,000 or $25, and to me it might be totally different. So, I mean, I'm not saying I don't support them, but I just feel like I never get enough information in this regard.
Well, what happens when next year another school wants to withdraw? Certainly
And if they're
our
all with-
expenses are gonna go up.
So,
If they're all withdrawing, maybe there's a benefit. Maybe
With-
we should look into that.
so with regard to District 86 though, you know, I'm sorry, Gina, you said, you know, we may not have any choice. You know,
Right.
they want to withdraw, they want
Right.
to withdraw, period. But having the two districts in 2 years, yes, maybe Lansing did cut back on staff, and yes, maybe some of the district took with them some of the services, and, you know, in the end, it did have minimal impact. But you're right, do we really know? No. We've never really had a good,
Accounting.
well, accountability on, you know, on the dollars. We really don't know. So obviously Lansing's been in effect for a long time, and we've just, year after year utilized their services and believe that because of the size of our district, pooling together the resources is probably the best thing. Do we know that for a fact? I don't know that we've ever had a presentation on it. So I guess the question I have is if we are comfortable with the information that 86 or that was provided here in order to make a decision on whether or not we're going to approve the withdrawal, to me, that's one issue. If we have all that information, that we should be able to act on this as an action item. If we feel that having this information creates more questions, that we then should be placing on one of our future agendas to further discuss the finances behind Lansing, then I would suggest that, you know, when we talk about items for the next agenda, which is the next thing, that, you know, that we say, yeah, this is something we feel we want to learn more about, understand more, and, you know, we want to hear more about it.
Well, let me ask this. So if we say, no, we don't want them to go out. I mean, and everyone else says, yeah, so like, how does the voting go down? Like, you know what I'm saying? How does that work?
They would need a majority of districts to deny their withdrawal.
Majority. And what are the other districts? How are they leaning right now?
To the best of my knowledge, the other districts have granted that, but I don't know that for sure, so I don't want to be quoted on that. I don't know of anybody who was against this.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying I'd like to know how much money is it going to cost us more. And I mean, and even if it's $10 million, I mean, in 14 districts say let them out, we really don't have a chance, choice anyways.
Well, here's what I got to answer that question. And I don't know that this answers that question. I'm thinking, okay? My best guesstimate, if I use these dollar figures that District 86 put in their Exhibit A, is it's gonna run us another $70,000 a year. Okay? But the question it begs is, what used to be 17 is now gonna be 15 if 86 is allowed out. Does Lansing still have to employ 300 full-time and part-time employees?
That'll be, we don't know what
Or-
their operating budget's gonna be for the next year, so.
Exactly, or can they start cutting to bring our costs down equal to what we've been paying all along?
Yeah, I'm not sure you
So-
get the
Well, we talked
70,000,
about
but I
that.
can tell you.
Understood. Well, I'm just using the 18 million.
But we
We've
talked about in the
been through
finance
this.
committee, that we need to probably,
Get
and this
more
is another
financing.
reason why I thought we should talk about it. Because we send an awful lot of kids out to private schools, we spend an awful lot, I think we decided like 14% of our budget goes to special ed. And, we don't know how, to get a good handle on it. Because obviously, that's what these other schools are doing, and they're seeing a benefit to paying for it themselves. And maybe that's something that we should do. And I guess that's why I thought, rather than just put it as a consent agenda, I can't even talk, is that we should talk about, and it opens the conversation.
Right, so District 86 is one vote, getting the Lansing discussion,
Correct.
or Lansing /finance discussion,
Right,
an agenda item.
Yep.
Completely different item.
right.
Yeah, because I know about a month ago, or 2 months ago, we had talked about getting some answers, and then they came in and did a little presentation of what services they provided, which was beneficial,
And I
but
actually
there was no
late
money
to that
attached
one,
to
so I
that.
didn't even see it.
Yeah, there were no numbers attached to that whole presentation.
Well, it almost sounds to me like Mark and Karen, there's probably been something that's been brought up
Yeah.
at the finance level, so maybe that was really the first place that this can begin, is with the, financial kind of advisory responsibilities that you've assumed.
Can we actually make it possibly a 3 to 5 minute agenda item first? I mean, because if we take it in the finance
So you know what the board
advisory,
might be looking for.
right, we're only gonna be looking at it from a, what's it cost our district, et cetera. We may wanna know, hey, Lansing, come in here and tell us more about the detailed budget that you have. If you're accepting public funds, are you a private, for-profit organization, or are you, should your budget be out there on display too? And then, just get a little bit more information
Well,
about
if you
what
want
the
to do
board
that,
would be looking for.
yeah, I would suggest,
And then we could meet.
if you're going to discuss it at the board, we never have a 3 or 4 minute discussion on anything, so I would suggest that we just have a presentation on the money that we pay to LATSI, the grant money that goes to LATSI, and the services that we get. That's a pretty straightforward.
And the money we get, too. The
Yeah, oh, yeah,
reimbursement.
yeah, right, and, I mean, that's,
Just the
good
entire
information from the
financial
board.
Yeah.
package for LADSI, yes.
Yeah, that's easy enough to do,
In
and,
addition to that, the special ed, not just LADSI, but because we send a lot outside, too.
Right, see, there was a lot more, I think, that, Karen had discussed.
well, no, we can include those things, so I think there's some confusion as to when there's a placement outside the district. A lot of those have nothing to do with LATSI, and some do.
Right, so let's
Yeah.
just, items for the next agenda is the next thing. So are we done with District 86?
Yes.
Okay, then items for
I
the
am.
next agenda,
Action item.
I've got to do it there, don't I? Yes, because we do need the action item there. Okay, thank you. As a result of us taking the approving Hinsdale District 86 LADSI withdrawal resolution off the consent agenda, we'd have to do it as a separate action item. So may I have a motion, please, to approve Hinsdale District 86 LADSI withdrawal resolution?
I'll make a motion.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve Hinsdale District 86 LADSI withdrawal resolution. I'm going to assume roll call.
Mrs. O'Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Marabli?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sedley?
Yes, ayes have it and the motion carries. Now we'll go on to items for the next agenda. Review fiscal year 14 school calendar, staffing recommendations, approve abatement of bonds, review St. John of the Cross bus contract, review governance and planning, section 1 board policies, ISAT data analysis, approve elementary summer construction, and just to be sure, additional information will be coming on that. And would it be the interest of the board that the LADSI, or, when would be an appropriate time then to discuss the LADSI finances and special ed?
Later, with the ISAT data analysis,
Are we analyzing last year's
I
data?
was gonna ask that same question.
No, I would explain to the board
I
what
looked at
this
the
is about.
date and I went, that's February,
Oh,
I don't think we do
we're
this
analyzing
until
before it comes to us.
March. I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, this is, I'm requesting that the board hear a presentation by a person by the name of Clay Graham, who's actually presented at Hinsdale and Butler and area districts on ISAT, because there's going to be some important changes coming on this, and also this understanding is going to help a lot from a lot of questions board members have had about comparing Pleasantdale with other districts and what ISAT, how it's useful and how it's not useful, and how it can be misleading. And he's met several times with our administrative team, and I do think it would be in the interest of the board. I think after hearing this, you would say, I'm glad I heard this, I understand this better from this third-party expert on what ISAT really means, how the going forward with the changes, what we should do. So I really do think that for the 15-20 minutes this would take, it'd be worth the board's time.
Is he from the ISAT or the ISB?
No, he is a professor at DePaul.
He's a professor at DePaul?
He's independent
All right.
from, he has no, and what he's been solicited by districts who want to get a better understanding on how ISAT is interpreted and how they can use it. And for us, we typically don't use it much because we know it has deficiencies. Well, the board really needs to understand going forward, particularly with the changes in this test, that I really think you would benefit from it.
But isn't the ISAT not going to be used after next year?
Well, it's hard to know exactly when it will be diminished, but after
But isn't
next
that
year,
this
the
plan
after
right
that.
now? I mean, why do we want to hear them if they're not even going to use this test after next year?
Yeah, but see, I don't associate it with, what you're referring to, I associate it with an Illinois standardized test. So if they got rid of what we currently know is ISAT, what are they replacing it with, and is that what this guy's presenting on?
The background, that's exactly why this is so timely, because already there's changes coming up this spring in terms of the cut scores for ISAT. So that's going to affect every district in the state, and when you see your rankings in the newspaper radically change, and you've got no understanding of what they mean in the first place, that's not a good thing. So I really do request on the board that you take the time to hear this, to get this background information, because going forward, this is going to continue to be an issue in terms of what is going to be happening this spring, and also what's going to be happening next year or the year after. So,
Does the board have interest then in the presentation?
I mean, I'm just thinking like,
I do.
it looks like a pretty full agenda. So maybe could we do it when it's not, I mean, like it's, when we have a lighter agenda?
Do which?
Here, this presentation, when we have a lighter agenda. Like, doesn't that seem like a lot already? We got the school calendar, we're gonna review it, staffing, I mean, it seems like we have a lot on there. I don't know, that's just my thought. I mean, do we have closed session? We don't know if we're gonna have closed session, and we may have closed session if we hear from the Attorney General. So I'm just thinking that's, if he's gonna present for 20 minutes, is May busy, or, you know what I'm thinking? I'm just thinking, what's not busy?
Staffing, I mean, looking at these items, review school calendar, approve abatement of bonds, review St. John the Cross bus contract, which I'm guessing has not changed over the course of the last X number of years. Governance and planning, board policy, that may or may not take a bit.
And then the Lansing?
And then,
No, the
Lansing.
question is whether or not we should do the Lansing next month. I mean, that was where I had started this before we went into what exactly is the ISAT data analysis.
Well, then we also
Um,
have the strategic action plan items to put on here.
Right.
And the people that aren't here tonight might want to
Right.
be updated, so I'm just thinking it's gonna be a long meeting.
I don't know how long it's gonna take, I'm interested in seeing it.
I would actually like, I mean, I would sooner
Yeah, I'd
see
like to
that
see
I
it,
next
but
think we
I
should
just don't know
rename
if
it.
it's, huh?
I think we should rename it.
Rename it.
Well, that I
it
do
should be
agree with
ISAT
you.
data analysis, it should be ISAT something or other presentation.
Test presentation, or ISAT presentation.
Well, you
Yeah.
said his name is Clay Graham? You know what, if the other schools, if he's speaking to the other schools, I think it behooves us to keep it on the agenda so that we Who's he are as speaking to? up on it as or if he's already speaking to other schools and we haven't heard his presentation, I think it behooves us to sit there and listen to what he has to say.
Who's he
So let's
speaking
just
to?
keep it,
said
Mark
Mar-
already said.
Butler,
Already been to Hinsdale and to Butler. I mean, these are
Hinsdale,
schools
Butler?
well, these are schools that we readily compare ourselves with. And like I said, the background information on this is very timely. I mean, the LATSI information, if you wanted to move something to the next month, I would say do that one in March.
Would you like me to call it?
It's not gonna hurt it.
Presentation.
The reason I'm asking is I could just go, I know, let me look on their website and see the presentation.
I
So
would
does the
rather have
majority-
the gentleman come and give the same presentation he's given
Do
to
we have to pay
Hinsdale,
for him to
et cetera.
present?
It's a $500 charge for the analysis that he's doing.
Oh, he is doing
The analysis
of
of-
our,
So
of
he's
our
going-
scores?
No, it's tailored to what our scores mean. So it's not like a generic ISAT thing. This is pretty
Oh.
meaty and detailed.
So that's why I'm thinking that it's gonna be a while.
So he's analyzing the data scores that we're not going to be using.
Why can't we have them like after we do the ISAT, when do we get our scores back from the ISAT? That's in the fall though, isn't it?
Well, I suggest not to do that. You need to go, I mean, the board needs to have its eyes open going forward with this topic because already there's changes this spring on how these scores are interpreted. And if you don't have the background that he can provide, it's just ripe for a lot of questions you may get, and it'll put the board in a really good position to say, look, we really understand what these ISAT scores mean and what they don't mean. So, I just think not having that information at this juncture would put the board, individual board, and the members in the collective board at a deficit.
I'd almost rather do it in the summer.
I'm fine with doing it now, before, we have our ISAT testing, so I'm comfortable with that, and I'm also comfortable with moving LADSI then to March. It's not gonna, like you said, that's not gonna change much, so.
And can I just add one thing too? I mean, if that's what we're gonna do, are you okay with that, Mark?
March is fine.
March for Lansing.
But then too, we don't wanna forget about the action plan too.
Right, the action plan and
The action plan for,
the strategic plan.
Strategic plan, what was
Yeah,
presented
that's
tonight,
not-
those
that's-
I think that's
those
gonna
1,
take a
2,
lot
and
of
3.
Okay, so I did it again, the consent agenda, we approved something and I had a question. Can I ask that, with Christine Markowitz, with her retirement, it was on the personnel report that we approved, did we have any, did someone check, do we have any exposure to TRS?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else for the next agenda? Open forum?
where'd our speaker go?
Closed session, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion that the Board of Ed move into closed session at 9:53 PM to discuss appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, dismissal, personnel, / midterm review of non-tenured teachers.
May I have a second, please?
A second.
Mrs. O'Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Mobley?
Yes.
Mrs. Nelson?
Yes.
Mrs. Silva?
Yes. The board will go into closed session after a quick little